Damien Cole hit the mat so hard, the windows rattled. 1 second he was standing. The next, he was flat on his back, staring at the ceiling, unable to breathe, put there by a man in a faded work shirt who hadn't even taken off his jacket. The room went dead silent. And what nobody in that gym understood yet was that the man who just dropped a black belt in under 3 seconds had been trying to hold back. Drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. If it moves you, subscribe and hit the bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. The morning Adrian Brooks walked into Iron Valley Martial Arts Center, he had already been awake for 4 hours. He had risen at 4:15, the same time he always did, before the sun touched the Virginia hills, and before the neighborhood dogs started their slow, sleepy chorus along the back fences. He had made coffee black, no sugar, the kind of coffee that doesn't apologize for being what it is, and he had stood at the kitchen window in the dark, holding the mug in both hands, watching the street lamps reflect off the wet pavement below. He had done the math again that morning, the way he always did, the way a single father does when there's nobody else to double-check the numbers. Rent current. Truck payment 3 weeks out. Mia's school supplies for the fall $42, already set aside in the envelope taped to the inside of the cabinet above the refrigerator. The envelope had a small drawing on it, a crayon sun with a smiley face that Mia had made when she was 5. He had never replaced it. Some things you don't replace. Howe was 32 years old, and he felt on most mornings considerably older than that. Not broken, not bitter, just worn in. The way good leather gets worn in, shaped by use, shaped by whatever it had been through. He finished the coffee, rinsed the mug, set it upside down in the rack, the way his mother had taught him when he was 7, and then walked quietly down the hallway to Mia's room. She was still asleep, 8 years old, curled on her side with one arm wrapped around a stuffed rabbit named Gerald that had lost one eye sometime last spring and had never been repaired because, according to Mia, Gerald preferred it. The night light on her dresser threw a pale orange glow across the room. She had her mother's nose. She had her mother's habit of sleeping with one foot hanging off the edge of the mattress, as though part of her was always ready to get up and go somewhere. Adrian stood in the doorway for a long moment. He didn't go in. He never went in when she was sleeping, not anymore. She was 8, and 8 was old enough to have her own space, old enough to need the door mostly closed, and the feeling that her room was hers. He had read about that somewhere, or maybe a teacher had told him, or maybe he had just figured it out the way he figured most things out, by paying attention. He pulled the door back to its usual position, 3 inches open, not more, and went to make her breakfast. By 6:30, Mia was at the kitchen table eating scrambled eggs with the focused expression of someone conducting serious business. "Dad," she said without looking up from her plate. "Yeah. Gerald wants to know if we're really going today." Adrian sat across from her with his second cup of coffee and a piece of toast he wasn't going to finish. "Tell Gerald yes." She considered this. "He's nervous. Gerald's been through worse. He lost his eye. He handled it fine." Mia finally looked up. She had her mother's eyes, too dark and direct, the kind of eyes that asked questions before the mouth did. What if the other kids are mean? Adrian set down his coffee. This was the real question. It had been the real question for months now, since the incident at school, that Mia had described in pieces slowly, the way you describe something that still hurts when you press on it. A boy in her class named Derek had been pushed into a locker by 2 older kids. It had happened in the hallway between second and third period. Mia had been 6 feet away. She had seen the whole thing. She had stood there frozen while Derek's backpack spilled across the floor, and the older kids laughed, and nobody, not one single person in that hallway, had done anything, including her. She hadn't said anything to Adrian for 2 weeks. Then one night at dinner, she had put down her fork and said very quietly, "I should have done something, Dad. I just stood there." He had not rushed to reassure her. He had thought about it the way he thought about everything important, carefully from multiple angles, trying to understand what she actually needed rather than what would make him feel better as a parent. What she needed wasn't comfort. What she needed was capability. "If the other kids are mean," Adrian said, looking at her steadily, "you're going to know what to do about it. That's the whole point." "What if they're bigger than me?" "They probably will be. That's also the point." She chewed, considered. What if I'm not good at it? You won't be, he said. Not at first. Nobody is. Were you good at it at first? Adrian picked up his toast. No. When did you get good? I thought about that for a moment. About a training yard in a different part of the world, a long time ago, in a heat that had nothing in common with Virginia mornings. About a man named Colonel Reed, who had a voice like gravel and the patience of someone who had given up on shortcuts before Adrian was born. A long time from now, he said. But you start today. Iron Valley Martial Arts Center sat between a dry cleaner and a cell phone repair shop on Kellerman Avenue in a part of town where the buildings were functional rather than beautiful, and the parking lot was shared between 3 businesses and consistently underlined with faded yellow lines. The sign above the door was black and red with a stylized fist and the words Iron Valley, where champions are made in block letters that had been faded by 2 Virginia summers. Adrian parked the truck, a 2009 Ford F-150 with a cracked left mirror that he kept meaning to replace, and sat for a moment with the engine off. In the back seat, Mia was looking out the window at the building with an expression he recognized. It was the same expression she wore before her first day of school, before her first dentist appointment, before anything that was large and new and uncertain. Controlled fear. She was her father's daughter. You ready? He asked. Gerald says he's ready. Good. Gerald goes in the bag, though. She clutched the rabbit. He wants to watch. Gerald watches from the bag. A pause. Then she very carefully placed Gerald face up inside the small backpack on the seat beside her with his remaining eye pointed toward the zipper opening so he could technically see out through the gap. Adrian got out of the truck. I was wearing what he always wore to things like this. Dark work pants. A charcoal gray shirt that had been washed enough times that it had faded to something between gray and blue, and boots that were clean but visibly old. He hadn't thought to dress differently. It hadn't occurred to him. He was coming to sign his daughter up for children's classes and to assess whether the facility was safe and well run. He was not coming to impress anyone. He carried Mia's backpack on his left shoulder and held her hand as they crossed the parking lot. That was the image that Damian Cole saw when he looked through the glass panel beside the front door. A tired-looking man in old clothes carrying a kid's backpack with a stuffed rabbit visible through the half-open zipper, holding his daughter's hand. Damian turned to Victor Hayes, who was standing at the front desk, reviewing the week's class schedule, and said, Get a load of this. Damian Cole was 38 years old, 6th degree black belt, and had been running Iron Valley for 6 years. He was broad-shouldered, carried himself with the particular confidence of a man who had not lost a sparring match in a long time, and had a habit of making assessments of people within the first 10 seconds of meeting them that he never revised, regardless of subsequent evidence. He had assessed Adrian Brooks in 4 seconds. Mechanic, he thought. Or construction. Something with his hands. Soft around the middle, not fat, but not trained. Carrying a little girl's bag. Probably divorced. Probably here because the kid needs after-school activities, and this is close to wherever he lives. Victor Hayes leaned around the desk to look. Victor was 34 4th-degree black belt, Damian's second-in-command, in everything, including judgment. Kid classes, Victor said, reading the same information from Adrian's appearance that Damian had read. Definitely kid classes. Bet he wants a family discount, Damian said. The third instructor, Logan Pierce, was on the mat running a junior student through a form when the door opened. Logan was 29, moved like a cat, and had been building a social media following for the last 2 years by posting videos of new students failing at things edited with music, captioned with jokes. He had 47,000 followers and considered himself something of a media personality in addition to a martial artist. He glanced at Adrian when the door opened and immediately reached for his phone. He didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. The eye for content that he had trained in himself the way other people train techniques. Something about the contrast, the faded shirt, the kid's backpack, the way the man was looking around the training floor with quiet, methodical attention felt like it might be interesting. He started recording. Adrian stopped just inside the door. He didn't rush to the desk. He didn't call out. He stood still for approximately 3 seconds and did what he always did when he entered a new space. He read it. The training floor was large, maybe 4,000 square feet of padded mat space. Mirrors on 2 walls. Racks of equipment along the north side. 2 heavy bags hanging from ceiling mounts in the corner. Strip lighting fluorescent slightly too bright. 2 exits visible from where he stood, the front door he had come through and a side door near the equipment racks. 11 people in the room. 3 adults, the instructors. 8 students ranging from roughly 10 years old to what looked like mid-20s. The junior student working with the youngest instructor had good footwork but was favoring his left side in a way that suggested a minor hip issue, probably muscular. He took all of this in without appearing to look at anything in particular. Then he walked to the desk. "Hi," he said. "My name's Adrian Brooks. I called yesterday about the children's program." Victor looked at him the way someone looks at a form they have to fill out with the minimal level of engagement required. Age. She's 8. Mia Brooks. Mia was standing slightly behind her father's right side, looking at the training floor with wide eyes. Gerald was in the bag on Adrian's shoulder. Victor slid a form across the desk. "Fill this out. Classes are Tuesday and Thursday, 4:30 to 5:30. First month is 50, equipment not included." "What equipment does she need to start?" "We sell it here. 200 for the starter package. Uniform, pads, gloves." Adrian nodded. He picked up the pen. Damien had drifted closer. He was leaning against the wall to Adrian's left, with his arms crossed in the posture of a man who is pretending to be casual while actually examining something. "You train?" Damien asked. Adrian glanced at him. "Little bit. Here and there." "Here and there," Damien repeated, and there was a tone in it that wasn't quite a laugh, but wasn't not one either. "What kind of little bit?" "This and that." Adrian returned his attention to the form. Damien looked at Victor. Victor looked at Damien. The look said, "You see what I see, right? We have an adult beginner class," Damien said. "Tuesday nights 7 to 8:30, if you want to train while she trains." Adrian continued filling out the form. "I appreciate that. Lot of dads do it. Something to keep you busy while you wait. I'll keep it in mind." "We've also got," Damien started. "I'm good," Adrian said, not unkindly, just finished with the conversation. He handed the form back to Victor, pulled out his wallet, and counted out $50 in cash. Victor took it. Damien watched, and something shifted in Damien's expression in that moment, something small that he probably wasn't aware of. A slight tightening around the eyes. The specific displeasure of a man who is accustomed to controlling the energy of every interaction in his space, and has just encountered someone who is effortlessly, and without apparent effort, declining to be controlled. "The girl can watch today's junior class," Victor said, "if she wants to see what it's like before committing." "That'd be great, thank you." Adrian looked down at Mia. "You want to watch?" Mia nodded, still looking at the training floor where Logan's student was practicing. "Then that's what we'll do," Adrian said. They sat on the bench along the east wall, Mia and her father, and for the next 40 minutes, they watched. Mia watched the way children watch things they're excited about, leaning forward, head moving to follow the action, mouth slightly open. Adrian watched the way he had been trained to watch. Not the obvious things. Not the techniques and the footwork and the forms. Those were the surface. He watched the relationships. He watched the power dynamics. He watched who deferred to whom, and who watched themselves in the mirrors, more than they watched their students, and who corrected with their hands when words would have done the job just as well. He watched Logan Pierce stop his student mid-form look deliberately toward his phone propped against the equipment rack, and adjust his own stance before beginning the correction, performing it rather than doing it. He watched Damien walk the floor with the particular step of a man who expected the floor to respond to him. He watched Victor straighten up whenever Damien was nearby and relax slightly when Damien turned away. I understood within 20 minutes the precise architecture of the 3-man hierarchy that ran this place. And he understood something else. He had made a mistake coming here. Not a dangerous mistake, not yet. But a mistake in the sense that this was not the environment he had imagined when he researched programs for Mia. He had been looking for structure and confidence building, and the kind of controlled discipline that he associated with good martial arts instruction. The kind he had known. The kind that built people up rather than sorting them into strong and weak and treating the weak as entertainment. How was revising his assessment, thinking about whether there were other programs in the area. Then Mia leaned against his arm. She didn't say anything. She just put her shoulder against his arm the way she had done since she was 3, a small automatic gesture that meant, I'm here and you're here, and that's good. And she was watching a 12-year-old girl on the mat land a clean block and grin at her own success with the uncomplicated joy of someone who had just figured something out. He looked at his daughter's face. He decided to give it one more class. The adult beginner session started at 6. Adrian had not intended to participate. He had settled Mia with a book on the bench. She was the kind of reader who could block out a hurricane and was planning to observe from the side. Damien had other ideas. We're short on numbers tonight, Damien said, appearing at Adrian's shoulder without particular warning. You should jump in, no charge, on the house. I'm good, Adrian said. Come on, you're just sitting there. Get a feel for it. Might help you decide if you want to train while Mia's in class. I appreciate the offer. We won't bite. Damien smiled. There was something in the smile that was public-facing and something else that was private. The public-facing part was friendliness. The private part was the specific pleasure of a man who has decided that something is going to happen the way he wants it to happen. Adrian looked at him. He measured the situation. How was not in any version of his life a man who was afraid of a room full of people. He was not worried about participating in a beginner's class. He was not concerned about being embarrassed or shown up or assessed and found wanting. He was aware with the precision of long training of exactly what would happen in the next 2 hours if he stepped onto that mat. He was weighing whether that outcome served any purpose he valued. All right, he said. Sure. Damien's smile widened. Doctor. What happened next, Adrian had expected down to its particulars. There were 7 students in the adult class, ranging from a teenage boy who moved like he'd had some wrestling experience to a woman in her 50s who was clearly there for fitness, to 3 men in their late 20s who had the look of people who had watched too many action movies and wanted to discover they were secretly badass. Adrian was the oldest man there and the least impressively dressed. Damien made sure he was aware of this, not directly. Damien was too experienced a social operator to be direct about it. He did it in layers. He assigned Adrian to the back row when he set up the warm-up lines. He demonstrated techniques quickly once and then moved immediately to the experienced students, for examples leaving the newer ones to work it out themselves. When he circulated to correct, he spent extra time with the woman in her 50s, patiently helping her, and spent extra time with Adrian too, but the kind of extra time that is actually a performance for the room. Pressing a grip adjustment when a verbal cue would have done it. Standing close in the way that's technically professional, but is actually territorial. Adrian received all of this without reacting to any of it. He made the adjustments that were actually corrections and ignored the ones that were theater. He moved through the warm-up exercises with the economy of someone who has done them 10,000 times. Not showing off the economy, not minimizing it, simply doing the exercises the way you do things you know how to do. Victor noticed first. He pulled Damien aside between drills, quick and quiet. Hey, watch the new guy. Damien glanced at Adrian, who was working through a movement sequence in the back row. What about him? Just watch him. Damien watched. And for a moment, a brief moment, the kind you don't acknowledge out loud, something changed in Damien's face. Adrian was not performing beginner movements. He was not fumbling or overthinking or making the small adjustments of someone building new muscle memory. He was moving through the beginner sequences, the way a classically trained musician moves through basic scales accurately, precisely without effort, in the same way you breathe. The movements were correct, not just technically correct. Correct in a way that suggested they were not movements he was learning. They were movements he was remembering. Huh, Damien said. Yeah, said Victor. Logan from across the room had already angled his phone. At the water break. Damien walked up to Adrian with a water bottle and a revised smile. You've trained before, he said. It wasn't a question. Little bit, Adrian said, drinking from his own bottle. Don't be modest. Wear different places. What style? Mixed. Damien let a pause develop. It was a technique silence deployed as a kind of pressure. Most people feel it. You're good, he finally said. Better than you're letting on. I'm just doing the warm-up. The warm-up a certain way. Damien tilted his head. We have a tradition here. Senior evaluation. Every new member spars with the instructors before being admitted to the full program. Helps us assess placement. Adrian looked at him steadily. I'm not joining the program. My daughter is. Could be good for both of you. I appreciate the suggestion. It's not really a suggestion, Damien said, and dropped the last layer of performance from his voice, just for a moment, just enough for both of them to know where they actually were. It's how we do things here. Adrian held his gaze for a long, quiet moment. Then, my daughter is on that bench. I came here for her. I'm not interested in sparring. Damien smiled again, the real smile, the one that didn't reach the eyes. We'll see, he said. The class ended at 7:30. Adrian helped Mia pack up her book. She had made it 2/3 of the way through the chapter she was reading and had the focused energy of someone who had also, despite the book, been watching things out of the corner of her eye and filing them away. Can we come back? She asked. We'll see, he said. Same words as Damien, different meaning. He shouldered her backpack and took her hand. The front door was locked. I tried it twice, the kind of twice, where the first time you think it's you, and the second time you know it's not. He looked at the door, then at the room behind him. Victor was standing near the side exit. Logan was picking up his phone from the equipment rack. Damien was standing in the center of the mat. Adrian understood the geometry of the moment with the total, absolute clarity of someone whose training had included, among other things, reading rooms fast. He looked down at Mia. She was looking at the three men. She was not afraid. She was doing the thing she had learned from watching him reading the room, filing what she found, keeping her face still. He squeezed her hand once. Stand behind me, he said quietly. By the bench. Dad. It's okay. I need you by the bench so I have room. She looked at him. Then she went to the bench and sat down, and she held Gerald in her lap, and she watched her father walk slowly toward the center of the room, toward Damien Cole. I asked to leave, Adrian said. His voice was even, not loud, the voice of a man who doesn't raise it because he doesn't need to. The door is locked. We're not done, Damien said. I am. Open the door. Show me what you've got, and I'll open the door. I don't have anything to show you, Adrian said. I'm here with my daughter. I want to take her home. Unlock the door. Nobody walks out of here, Damien said, without being evaluated. He spread his hands, a gesture that was almost friendly. Almost. Come on, show us. You've got the moves, we all saw it. What's the problem? Afraid? No. Then what? I'm not interested in fighting you. That's not what I asked. It's my answer. A silence settled over the room. Logan raised his phone. Victor shifted his weight to the balls of his feet. And Damien Cole, who had not lost in this room in 4 years, who had built his reputation and his identity on the architecture of controlled dominance, who had over 6 years used the backroom theater of this moment to remind countless people that his space ran by his rules, looked at the tired man in the faded shirt standing in the middle of his mat, and felt for the first time in a very long time something he didn't have a name for immediately. Then he had the name for it. Caution. He pushed past it. Last chance, he said. Show us what you've got. Voluntary, or we find out the hard way. Adrian stood very still. He heard behind him Mia on the bench, not crying, not calling out, sitting still, holding Gerald, watching her father the way she had always watched him, with the absolute settled confidence of someone who knows without evidence and beyond argument that the person they are looking at is going to be okay. He had spent 8 years trying to be worthy of that look. He was not going to let her see him be anything other than what she believed he was. I'm going to say this once more, Adrian said, and then I'm done talking. Damien waited. Open the door. Damien moved. It was fast. That's the thing that nobody who wasn't in the room could fully understand from the video later, no matter how many times they watched it. The compression of it. How something that looked like several seconds was actually from the inside, from the perspective of anyone trained to measure these things, much less than that. Damien's strike was committed. A real technique thrown with the full weight of someone who intended it and had done it before. Not sloppy, not arrogant in execution, whatever the motivation behind it. Adrian was no longer where the strike was going by the time it arrived. It was not a dramatic movement. That was the other thing. There was no leap, no spin, no visible expenditure of force. Adrian moved approximately 18 inches to his left, turned his body at the hip, extended his left arm in a single compact motion, and used Damien's own committed forward momentum as the primary mechanism of what happened next. Damien went down, not gently, but not cruelly either. Controlled. The way you set something down that you don't want to break with deliberate intention, bringing it to the floor rather than throwing it at the floor. Damien landed hard enough to confirm the point and soft enough to preclude a hospital visit. He was on his back with Adrian's weight positioned across his center and Adrian's right forearm across his chest before the sound of the impact had finished echoing off the walls. The room went silent. Not the silence of a crowd holding its breath. The silence of a room where something has happened that nobody had a category for. Where the expected version of events, the one everyone had assembled and agreed upon before it started, had been replaced by a different version that nobody had prepared for. Mia did not make a sound. She sat on the bench with Gerald in her hands and watched. Adrian held the position for exactly long enough for Damien to understand it, and then he stood up and stepped back. He did not say anything. He extended a hand. Damien stared at it for a moment. The hand of the man who had just put him on the mat, extended not in triumph, not in contempt, but in the straightforward human gesture of one person helping another person get up. Damien didn't take it. He rolled over and got up on his own. His face was the color of heated iron, and his jaw was set, and there was something behind his eyes that was working through several stages very quickly. Victor launched himself from the side exit. He was faster than Damien, and he was angry in the way that made people faster and less careful, and he came in with real intent, the kind that doesn't care about controlling the outcome, because the outcome has already been decided by everything that came before it. It was the wrong state to be in. Adrian turned to face him, absorbed his angle with a single lateral step. Let Victor's momentum carry him into a position where he had committed his balance entirely to a direction that Adrian had already vacated and redirected it. Victor went down sideways away from the bench, away from Mia, into open mat space, and Adrian had one hand on his collar and one hand maintaining the geometry of the fall, the entire time, guiding rather than driving, so that Victor hit the mat hard enough to be absolutely certain of what had happened, and soft enough to stand up in 10 seconds. Logan dropped his phone. Whether he dropped it by accident, whether the sight of both his partners down in under a minute had disconnected something in his motor control, or whether he dropped it on purpose in the way that people sometimes physically discard the object they were using to hide behind, Adrian never knew. Logan came forward. He was the youngest of the three, the fastest, and he came in without the arrogance of the other two, because he had just watched the arrogance go down twice, and he understood on some animal level that he was in a different kind of situation than the one he'd been standing in 3 minutes ago. He came in low and committed and fast. Adrian stopped him. Not dramatically. The way you stop a door from closing by being there in the right place at the right time, with the right amount of precisely calibrated force applied to exactly the right point of leverage. Logan found himself suspended in a position from which every option available to him would make things worse, with no visible expenditure of energy on Adrian's part, and then settled to the mat with the careful control of someone who has run completely out of good choices. 61 seconds, 3 black belts. Adrian stood in the middle of the room and breathed slowly. He was not breathing hard. He straightened his shirt, the motion of a man who has just walked in from a light wind, and turned toward the bench. Mia was sitting exactly where he had left her. She had Gerald in both hands, and her eyes were bright, and her face had the specific expression of a child who is trying to understand something enormous and is not afraid of the size of it. Adrian walked to her. He crouched down to her level. "You okay?" he said. She nodded. "Ready to go home?" She looked at him for a long moment. That look, the one that had held through all of it. The look of absolute settled certainty. And then she said quietly and very seriously, "Were you scared?" Adrian thought about that. About what honesty required. "A little," he said. "For you. Not for yourself." "No." "Why not?" He picked up the backpack. He stood. He looked at the three men in the room, Damien sitting up on the mat with his hands on his knees, Victor against the wall, Logan sitting very still with the phone on the mat beside him, and then he looked at the front door. The light above the door handle had shifted from red to green at some point in the last 60 seconds. Damien must have triggered it from the floor without Adrian noticing, or maybe the automatic timer had tripped. Either way, the door was open. He took Mia's hand. "Because I knew what I was doing," he said. And he pushed through the door and walked his daughter out into the night air, into the wet pavement smell of Kellerman Avenue across the parking lot where the faded yellow lines reflected dull gold in the street lamps, and he put her in the back seat of the truck and buckled her seatbelt and handed her Gerald, and then got in the driver's seat and sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel. "Dad," Mia said from the back seat. "Yeah. I want to learn that." He started the truck. "Yeah," he said. "I know." He pulled out of the parking lot and drove them home through the Virginia night. And all the way there he thought about Colonel Reed, about training yards and hard lessons, and the single most important thing the colonel had ever told him. Not during a drill, not during an evaluation, but on a Thursday evening over terrible cafeteria coffee, when Adrian was 23 and raw-edged and still believed that the point of power was to use it. "The hardest thing you'll ever learn," the colonel had said, "is to know exactly what you're capable of, and choose not to." Most men can't do it. They train for years, and then they can't do it because they need people to know. They need the recognition. They need the fear. The ones who can do it, the ones who can carry everything they've learned and walk into a room and be the quietest person there. Those are the ones who are actually strong. "You listening, Brooks?" Adrian remembered saying yes, sir. He remembered meaning it. He turned onto their street. The house was dark, except for the porch light he always left on the yellow glow of it, steady against the black Virginia sky. Mia was asleep by the time he parked. He carried her in. He set her on her bed and pulled the blanket up and put Gerald in the crook of her arm and stood in the doorway for a long moment in the dark, watching her breathe, listening to the quiet house around them. Then he went back to the kitchen and stood at the window with his cold coffee and looked at the street lamps. Tomorrow, he would find a different program. A better one. One that taught confidence the way it was supposed to be taught, not as a performance, not as hierarchy, not as the right to make someone else small. But tonight, in the quiet of the house, his daughter would fall asleep safe in. He stood at the window and let himself feel just for a moment the weight of everything he carried, and the quiet that came from knowing he could carry it. In Iron Valley Martial Arts Center on that same night, a phone lay face down on the mat. On it, a video. 61 seconds. And by morning, the world would begin to find out who Adrian Brooks really was. The video went live at 2:47 in the morning. Logan Pierce had not intended to post it at 2:47 in the morning. He had intended originally not to post it at all, or at least that had been his intention during the first 20 minutes after Adrian Brooks walked out the front door with his daughter, when all three of them were still sitting on the mat in various states of physical and psychological disassembly, not speaking the room around them, carrying the particular silence of a place where something irreversible had just occurred. Damien had been the first one to stand. He'd done it slowly, the way you move when you're checking inventory, measuring what still works, what doesn't, what hurts more than it should. He pressed 2 fingers against his ribs on the right side and breathed carefully, and then decided whatever was happening, there was bruised rather than broken, and filed it under acceptable. "Nobody posts that," he said. His voice was flat, operational. Logan looked at his phone on the mat. "Nobody posts anything," Damien said. "We don't know who that guy is. We don't know what we're dealing with." Victor was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, holding his left shoulder with his right hand, in a way that suggested the shoulder was not currently his favorite part of his body. "He walked in off the street," Victor said. "He's a mechanic." "He is not a mechanic," Damien said. Silence. I mean, maybe he's a mechanic, Damien said, but that is not all he is. Logan picked up the phone. He turned it over in his hands. He looked at the 61 seconds of footage that existed on it, most of it tilted and partially obscured by the angle he'd been holding it at when he dropped it. But enough. More than enough. The kind of footage that doesn't need to be perfect to communicate exactly what happened. I'm not posting it, Logan said. But he didn't delete it. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was made 4 hours later when Logan was lying in his apartment, unable to sleep, turning the phone over and over on his chest in the dark, and he opened the video and watched it again. Then he watched it again. And the part of his brain that had spent 2 years building a social media following the part that thought in terms of metrics and retention, and the particular electricity of content, that nobody expects that part woke up fully and loudly and said, 47,000 followers. This would break 100,000 by morning. He told himself he would just show a few people, not post, just share privately. A small circle. He told himself this with the conviction of someone who already knows what they're going to do. At 2:47 in the morning, Logan Pierce posted 61 seconds of video to his account with the caption, "When the beginner turns out to be anything but." Martial arts. Unexpected, #Iron Valley. He put his phone down and went to sleep. By the time he woke up at 7, the video had 400,000 views. Adrian found out from Mia. She came to the kitchen table at 7:15 in her school uniform, hair still damp from the shower, and she sat down across from him and said without preamble, "Dad, you're on the internet." He looked up from the stove where he was managing eggs and the coffee simultaneously. "What?" She turned her tablet around. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he turned off the burner. He came around the table and sat beside her and watched the video. His video of him in a faded gray shirt in a room he had walked into 24 hours ago, looking for a children's martial arts class through to the end. He was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. "There are comments," Mia said, scrolling. "A lot of them. Don't read them." "I already read some." "Then stop reading more." He stood up, went back to the stove, turned the burner back on. "Eat your breakfast. Dad, people are saying—" "I know what people are saying." He cracked 2 eggs into the pan. "It doesn't change what happened or what we do next." "What do we do next?" "Eggs first," he said. "Then school, then I go to work." He paused. "Then I figure out the rest." Mia looked at the tablet. Then she closed the cover and put it face down on the table. She folded her hands in front of her with the deliberate, slightly formal posture of someone who has decided to be very adult about something. "Okay," she said. He put her eggs in front of her. He stood at the counter with his coffee and looked at the back window, the way he did every morning, and the street outside was exactly the same as it had always been. Ordinary houses, ordinary yards. A neighbor's truck that needed the transmission looked at, and the owner kept meaning to bring it in. The video had 400,000 views. He drank his coffee. The garage where Adrian worked was called Mercer's Auto. It had been called that for 30 years, which was how long Tom Mercer had owned it, and would probably be called that for another 30, because Tom Mercer was 61 years old and had the physical constitution of a man who had spent 6 decades in apparent negotiation with the concept of personal mortality and consistently come out ahead. Tom was behind the counter when Adrian came in at 8, and he looked at Adrian with the expression of a man who has already had several cups of coffee and done considerable thinking. "So," Tom said. "Morning, Tom." "My granddaughter called me at 6 this morning. She's 17. She does not call me at 6 in the morning under normal circumstances." Adrian hung up his jacket and pulled on his work shirt. "She all right. She's fine. She called to tell me that the guy who works at my garage is on the internet." Tom crossed his arms. "Are you going to explain any of this to me?" Adrian looked at him. Tom Mercer had given Adrian a job 11 years ago when Adrian had come back from the last of several things he didn't talk about and needed work that was honest and physical and didn't require him to talk about the things he didn't talk about. Tom had hired him in 20 minutes and never asked the questions he probably had. That was the deal, unspoken and understood. I took Mia to sign up for a kids class last night, Adrian said. Things went sideways. Sideways, Tom repeated. 3 of the instructors locked the door and decided I needed to demonstrate something before I could leave. Tom was quiet for a moment. And you demonstrated. I got my daughter home. Tom looked at him for a long, measuring moment, the look of a man assembling a picture from pieces he's been carrying for a while. 3 black belts, he finally said. Yes, sir. 60 seconds. Give or take. Tom uncrossed his arms. He picked up his coffee mug. He said without looking up, "The Johnson Buick needs the alternator replaced. Keys are on the rack." Yes, sir. And Adrian. Tom looked up. His voice was level and exact, and there was something in it that was not quite paternal, but was close enough to matter. Whatever this stirs up, you keep that little girl clear of it. That's the only plan I have, Adrian said. He went to the rack, took the keys, and went to work. By noon the video had 1.2 million views. By 1 o'clock, 3 separate local news stations in Virginia had called the number associated with the Iron Valley Martial Arts Center. By 2 o'clock, Damian Cole was on the phone with a lawyer. Adrian knew none of this while it was happening. He was under the Johnson Buick replacing an alternator with his phone face down in his jacket pocket, because when he was working, he didn't look at his phone. That was another habit from a long time ago. The discipline of complete attention, of not splitting focus between the thing in your hands and the noise in your head. The noise could wait. The alternator could not. He finished at 2:40, wiped his hands on the shop rag, and sat on the bench near the garage door with the late afternoon light coming in at a low angle and his phone in his hand. 17 missed calls. 11 of them from numbers he didn't recognize. 3 from a number labeled only D. Cole, which took him a moment to place, and then he placed it because he'd given his number to the facility when he filled out Mia's enrollment form the previous evening. Damian Cole was calling him. The other 3 missed calls were from Marcus Webb. Adrian stared at Marcus's name on the screen for a long moment. Marcus Webb was not someone Adrian had spoken to in 4 years. Marcus Webb was not someone most people had spoken to in 4 years, because Marcus Webb had the kind of career that made social contact intermittent and the kind of personality that made it tolerable. He was 44 years old, built like a piece of industrial equipment, and had been at various points across 20 years of Adrian's life, a training partner, a superior officer, a close friend, and the single most perceptive reader of situations that Adrian had ever met. If Marcus was calling, it was because Marcus had seen the video. And if Marcus had seen the video, he understood exactly what it meant. Adrian called him back. Marcus picked up on the first ring. "Well," Marcus said. No greeting. That was Marcus. "You kept your hands tight." "I'm out of practice." "You put 3 black belts on the mat in a minute." "They were slow." "Brooks." "What?" "Stop being humble and tell me what's happening." Adrian leaned his head back against the garage wall and looked at the ceiling. He could hear the sounds of the shop behind him. Tom on a call, the hydraulic lift, cycling the radio, playing something country and low. "I took Mia to sign up for a kids class. The instructors decided to make an example of me. I chose not to be an example. And now you're on the internet." "Yeah, a lot of the internet." "So I gather." A pause. He could hear Marcus doing what Marcus always did on the phone, moving. The man could not stand still during a conversation. "Have you talked to anyone?" "Tom?" "I mean officially. Press. Legal." "No." "They're going to come after you," Marcus said. "Cole already put out a statement. I saw it 20 minutes ago. He's claiming you attacked unprovoked, that the whole thing was staged." Adrian was quiet. "He's got the edited version," Marcus said. "Logan Pierce posted the full thing, but Cole's people cut it. The version they're pushing starts after the door is locked. You don't see the lead-up. You don't see the threats. You just see a man in a work shirt walking onto a mat and dropping people." "I see." "Out of context, it looks different." "I know what it looks like." "Brooks, I'm not telling you what it looks like because I think you're slow. I'm telling you because you need to understand what you're walking into. There are people on the internet right now who are on your side, and there are people on the internet who are watching that edited version and don't like what they see. And there are other people who don't care what actually happened and just want to watch it go sideways. All three groups are very loud. Adrian said nothing for a moment. I thought about Mia at school right now in her classroom. Hopefully not on her tablet. Hopefully doing whatever 8-year-olds do on a Tuesday in the second week of school, reading or working on numbers or arguing gently with the kid next to her about something that mattered only to 8-year-olds and mattered enormously. What do you think I should do? Adrian asked. Marcus made a sound that was not quite a laugh. In 20 years, Adrian had asked him that question exactly 4 times. Marcus knew the rarity of it. He took it seriously. Nothing yet, Marcus said. Let it breathe. The full video is out there. The truth is in it. People will find it. And if they don't, then we handle it, but give it a day. Okay. And Adrian. Marcus's voice shifted slightly. Something in it that was not professional. That was the version of Marcus that existed outside of the role. The version that had been in the same rooms and the same difficult moments and had come out the other side still talking to the same people. How's Mia? She's good. She okay after last night? Adrian looked at his hands. The rough, calloused hands. The hands that had folded a child's blanket 6 hours after the same motion that had put 3 men on a mat. She asked me this morning if she could learn, he said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, smart kid. She is. You going to teach her? Eventually, when she's ready. How will you know when she's ready? Adrian thought about Mia on the bench in the middle of all of it, still and quiet and watching. She already is, he said. But we'll go slow. He picked her up from school at 3:15. She got into the truck and buckled her seatbelt and immediately looked at him with the direct gaze of someone who has been waiting patiently all day to resume a conversation. How was school? He asked. Fine. Nobody said anything. I don't think anyone knows. She paused. Except Tyler Martinez, who said he saw something on his older brother's phone. But I told him it wasn't you. You told him it wasn't me. I lied, she said with complete composure. Was that wrong? Adrian considered this. It was protective, he said. There's a difference. We'll talk about it later. Okay. She looked out the window. They drove for a block. Then, is it bad? The internet thing? It's complicated. Are you in trouble? He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Not the kind that matters. There's some confusion about what happened. People saw a video that didn't show the whole thing. But the whole thing was on Logan's phone. I saw him recording. The full video is out there too, Adrian said. People just need to find it. Mia considered this with the focused energy of someone doing actual math. If more people share the real one than the fake one, she said slowly, then the truth wins. That's roughly how it works, yeah? What if they don't? Then we deal with it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, are you scared? He had answered this last night. He gave her the same answer, a little, for you. Not for yourself. The only thing that worries me is if this makes your life harder. School, friends, people treating you differently. She thought about this with visible seriousness. Then she said, Tyler Martinez already thought I was weird. Adrian felt something in his chest release slightly. That's probably true regardless. It's definitely true, Mia said. He told Madison Keller I eat my lunch in alphabetical order, which is not even accurate. It's in order of temperature. Of course it is. Hot things first, so they're still hot. Then room temperature. Then cold. It's basic logic. I know, Bug. Tyler doesn't understand logic. A lot of people don't, Adrian said. Damian Cole called again at 5. This time Adrian answered. The silence on the line lasted about 3 seconds, which was long enough for both of them to understand that the territory of this call was different from the territory of the previous evening. The mat was gone. The locked doors were gone. What was left was 2 men on opposite ends of a phone line with a situation between them. Mr. Brooks, Damian said. Mr. Cole. I assume you've seen the situation. I have. Another pause. I want to be straightforward with you. My lawyer has advised me to say certain things right now, and I'm not going to say any of them. I'm calling because He stopped, adjusted, started again. What happened last night didn't go the way it should have gone. Adrian waited. I'm not admitting anything formally. I want to be clear about that. But I'm telling you man to man that I understand the position I put you in. Do you understand the position you put my daughter in? Adrian said. Not loudly, not with heat, just with the steady weight of someone asking a question that requires an actual answer. Damien's silence was different this time. Heavier. She's 8 years old, Adrian said. She came to your facility because she wanted to learn something. And she sat on a bench and watched 3 adult men professionals instructors people who are supposed to be teaching children try to intimidate her father. I know, Damien said. It came out like something from a different direction than the rest of the call. Lower. I want you to think about that, Adrian said. Not about the video, not about your reputation or what your lawyer is saying. I want you to think about what Mia saw last night and what she is going to carry from it. What did she say? She asked me if she could learn what I did. A pause. She asked because she saw 3 people use their size and their authority and their position to try to control someone who didn't have any of those things. And she's been thinking about that for months, about what it means to be in that position and not be able to do anything. And you and your people gave her a front row seat to exactly that scenario. Mr. Brooks, I'm not finished. Damien stopped. I'm not calling the police, Adrian said. I don't want a lawsuit. I don't want any of this on the news. What I want is for this to go away quietly, so that my daughter can go back to being an 8-year-old instead of the kid whose father is all over the internet. Can we do that? A long silence. The story's already out, Damien said. I know, but it doesn't have to get bigger. Cole's posting that I attacked first. Damien caught himself. My statement currently. I know what your statement says. There are people who believe it. There are also people who have the full video, Adrian said. The one Logan recorded from start to finish, including the locked door, including the 3 of you setting up the situation while my daughter's bag was still on my shoulder. Another silence. A different kind. Here's what I'm offering, Adrian said. You pull the statement. You clarify that there was a misunderstanding and that the situation was resolved between the parties. No details. No blame. The video noise dies down in a week because there's always something else. Mia and I find a different program, and you never see us again. And if I don't, then the full video keeps circulating on its own, and people keep watching it and forming their own conclusions. And former students of yours, who have been quiet so far, keep deciding whether they stay quiet. And the families of children enrolled in your junior program keep reading the comments and deciding whether they want their kids in a facility associated with what that video shows. He said it without threat in his voice. Not as a weapon, as information. Damien understood the difference. I need to talk to my lawyer, Damien said. That's fine. I'll call you back. Take your time, Adrian said. I'm having dinner with my daughter. He hung up. Hi Mata Spaghetti because it was Tuesday, and spaghetti was Tuesday. Mia sat at the kitchen table and did her homework while he cooked a worksheet on multiplication that she finished in 8 minutes, and a short reading response that took her considerably longer because she had opinions about the story's ending, and it took her time to articulate them precisely. They ate at the table and talked about school and about a book she was reading, and about whether Gerald would want a new eye if they could find the right button, and about the difference between a broken bone and a bruise, which Mia brought up in a way that was technically general, but was not actually general. Does it hurt? She asked. When you fall that way? A little, Adrian said. Less if you know how. Do you know how? I do. Can you teach me? He looked at her across the table, the homework, the half-eaten spaghetti, Gerald propped against the napkin holder, one-eyed and attentive. Yeah, he said. We'll start this weekend. She nodded with the gravity of someone receiving important information and sat up slightly straighter. Okay. Nothing dramatic, he said. We start with how to stand. How to stand, she repeated. Everything starts with how to stand, he said. Most people never really learn it. She considered this. How long does it take? To stand right whole life, he said. But you get the basics in an afternoon. His phone buzzed at 9 that evening. Not Damien. Not Marcus. A number he didn't know with a 202 area code that he placed after a moment as Washington, D.C. He almost let it go to voicemail. Something made him answer. Mr. Brooks. The voice was measured professional, with the unhurried delivery of someone who talks to difficult people for a living and has learned that patience is the most effective pressure. My name is Patricia Holloway. I'm an attorney. I'm calling on behalf of several former students of Iron Valley Martial Arts Center. Adrian sat up slightly. I've been in contact with 9 individuals, Holloway continued, who have had experiences at that facility that share significant features with what was captured on video last night. Some of them have been quiet because they believed they were isolated cases. Seeing your situation has made them reconsider. Ms. Holloway, I'm not interested in a lawsuit. I understand that, Mr. Brooks. I'm not calling to recruit you as a plaintiff. I'm calling to inform you that there is a legal action forming independent of your involvement, and to let you know that if the full video and any documentation of your interactions with that facility becomes relevant to that proceeding, we may be in touch. What kind of action? Civil liability. Pattern of conduct. There are parents involved. Former junior students. It goes back further than last night. Adrian was quiet for a moment. He thought about the bench along the east wall, and Mia on it, and the 12-year-old girl on the mat, who had landed a clean block and grinned with uncomplicated joy. He thought about how many 12-year-olds had been in that room across 6 years. What do you need from me? He asked. Nothing right now. I wanted you to know it was happening. And I wanted to ask, and you have no obligation to answer, how long had the 3 instructors been behaving that way? I was there for 1 evening, Adrian said. Did you form any impressions in that evening? He thought about Logan and his phone angled at the back row before class started. He thought about the way Damien moved through the room and the way Victor straightened up when Damien was close. He thought about the junior student with the hip compensation who was being pushed through forms without anyone noticing or caring about a potential injury. Yes, he said. I did. Would you be willing to share those impressions in a formal context if asked? He was quiet for a long time. He did not want this. He had told Damien he didn't want this, and he had meant it. He wanted quiet. He wanted Mia's life to go back to being school and Tuesday spaghetti and debates about Gerald's eye. But he thought about 9 people who had been quiet because they thought they were alone, and about the 12-year-old on the mat. If asked, he said finally. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I'm sorry for the late call. It's fine. He sat with the phone in his hand after the call ended, looking at the dark kitchen window. Then he got up and went to check on Mia. She was asleep on her side foot off the edge of the mattress, Gerald in the crook of her arm. The nightlight made the same orange glow it always did. He pulled the door back to its usual position, 3 inches not more, and stood in the hallway for a moment. He had spent 11 years trying to live quietly. Not invisibly, there was a difference. He wasn't hiding. He was simply living in the manner that suited the person he had chosen to become, after the person he had been when he was younger, in a different context, doing different things, for reasons he had believed in, and still did, and still carried carefully, the way you carry anything that was both heavy and worth carrying. The quiet hadn't asked him to stop knowing what he knew. It had asked him to use it only when there was no other option. Last night there had been no other option, and now the quiet was over at least for a while. He went back to the kitchen and sat at the table where Mia's homework was still spread out, the multiplication worksheet and the reading response with her careful, slightly oversized handwriting and her very detailed opinion about the story's ending. He read it. She had written, "The ending was not fair because the character did the right thing, but nobody believed him at first. He had to wait a long time for people to understand the truth. I think the author wanted us to know that doing the right thing is not the same as having an easy time. Sometimes the right thing is hard, even when you did it right. Adrian read it twice. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. Damian Cole called back at 7 the next morning. Adrian was at the kitchen window with his coffee. He answered on the second ring. "I talked to my lawyer," Damian said. He sounded different. Not broken. A man like Damian Cole did not break overnight over a phone call and a legal situation, but flatter. Like something in him had been set down and hadn't been picked back up yet. "He thinks I should fight it." "I know," Adrian said. "He thinks the edited version gives us enough to muddy the water. That's his phrase, not mine." "I know that too." A pause. "I'm not going to do that." Adrian said nothing, waiting. "I'm pulling the statement today," Damian said. "I'll put something out that says the situation has been resolved between the parties. No details, like you said." Adrian looked out the window. The street was ordinary and early morning quiet. A dog somewhere. Someone's trash cans. "Why?" he asked. "Because..." Damian stopped. Started again. "Because my younger sister called me last night. She saw the video. Both of them. The edited one and the full one. And she said things to me that I am not going to repeat, because they are between me and her." Another pause. "But she made me think about what somebody on that bench saw last night." Adrian was quiet. "She's 8, Damian said. "Yes." "She was just sitting there." "Yes." Silence on the line. "I'm sorry," Damian said, "for what happened in that room. I'm sorry to her specifically, and to you generally." Adrian held his coffee and looked at the street. "Thank you," he said. "Just that." "The other two," Damian started. "That's between you and them. Logan's going to be a problem. The video is already his biggest post. The full video is already more viewed than the cut version," Adrian said. "By a significant margin from what I can see. The audience is making the judgment on its own." Damian breathed out, a long breath. "Yeah, Damian." It was the first time Adrian had used his first name. On the other end of the line, there was a subtle shift, the recognition that the register of the conversation had changed. "The people coming to your facility are bringing their children there. Parents are trusting you with the most important thing they have. That's an extraordinary position to be in." "I know." "Do you..." A long silence. "I used to," Damian said. Adrian set down his coffee. "Then find your way back to it," he said. "That's the only thing worth doing with what happened last night." He hung up. He stood at the window for another long moment. Then he went to wake Mia up for school. By the end of that day, the full video, 61 seconds, slightly tilted, partially obscured by the angle of a dropped phone, had been viewed 11 million times across 6 platforms. The comment sections were what comment sections always are, which is to say, they were everything at once: furious, admiring, skeptical, conspiratorial, defensive, moved, cynical, and occasionally in the spaces between the noise completely and simply right. The edited version was still circulating, but the ratio had reversed. The full video carried the context. The full video showed the locked door and Adrian's repeated requests and the geometry of 3 men setting up a situation around a father and a child. The truth was in the pixels. People were finding it. Adrian knew because Marcus called that evening and said without preamble, "They found it." "I heard." Comment section is running about 9-1. What's the one? People who think it was staged for views. Of course. And people who think you're some kind of secret ninja sent from an ancient order. Adrian looked at the ceiling. Also not inaccurate. There are 23 news outlets that have picked it up domestically, 4 international. Marcus. Yeah. Is there anything I need to actually respond to right now, legally or otherwise, or can I just be a person for one more day? Marcus was quiet for a moment. The sound of him moving, the background sound of wherever Marcus always was. "You can be a person," he said, "for one more day." "Good. But Brooks..." The not professional version of Marcus, the one underneath the other one. "How are you not Mia? You." Adrian looked around the kitchen. The table with the homework. The dish rack with the mug upside down. The cabinet with the envelope taped inside it, the crayon son still smiling. "I'm okay," he said. "It's loud, but I'm okay. You want company, I can be in Virginia in 4 hours." "I know, I'm good." "You sure?" "I'm sure. I'll call tomorrow." "Yeah." He sat at the kitchen table and listened to the house. From down the hall came the small sounds of Mia getting ready for bed, the water running, the specific thump of Gerald being relocated from the floor to the mattress, the creak of the second floorboard from the end of the hallway that had been creaking for 3 years and that he kept telling himself he was going to fix. He pulled Mia's reading response toward him. "Sometimes the right thing is hard, even when you did it right." He read it one more time. He folded it carefully and put it in his shirt pocket, close to where his heart was, and sat in the kitchen until the house went quiet. Then he turned off the light and went to make sure his daughter was asleep. She was. He stood in the doorway and listened to the night and thought about 11 million people who had seen 61 seconds of his life and had no idea what the other seconds were made of: the 4:15 mornings, and the coffee that doesn't apologize, and the crayon envelope, and the faded gray shirt, and the 11 years of deliberately quiet living between the man he was now and the man he had been trained to be. 11 million people. One of them was probably Tyler Martinez's older brother. One of them was probably somewhere exactly the right person to see it at exactly the right time. He pulled the door back to 3 inches and walked to his own room in the dark, the way a man walks through a house he knows completely without turning on a single light. The call from Child Protective Services came on a Thursday morning. Adrian was under a Chevy Silverado when Tom knocked twice on the undercarriage and said, "Phone," with the tone of a man who did not want to be the one delivering whatever this was. Adrian rolled out on the creeper, looked at Tom's face, and sat up. Tom handed him the phone without explanation. The woman on the other end identified herself as Sandra Yates' caseworker and said the words in the order that such words are always said. An inquiry had been initiated. A welfare check was standard procedure. She wanted to schedule a home visit at his earliest convenience. It was nothing to be alarmed about. These things were routine. Adrian listened to all of it without interrupting. Then he said, "Who filed the inquiry?" A pause on Sandra Yates's end. "I'm not able to disclose that." "I understand. Can you tell me the basis of the concern?" The filing referenced a child being present during a violent incident. It expressed concern about the child's safety in the home environment. Adrian was quiet for a moment. The shop sounds continued around him. The radio, the compressor cycling, the ordinary noises of a place where honest work was being done. Tom had walked back toward the counter and was making a point of being busy with something that didn't require him to hear this conversation. "I can make myself available whenever you need," Adrian said. "I'd ask that the visit be scheduled for after 3:15 so my daughter is home. She should be there. She's the one you need to see, is all right." Sandra Yates paused again, and in the pause, Adrian heard something shift slightly. Some small recalibration. Yes. That's actually helpful. Most parents prefer the child not be present for the initial visit." "Most parents have something to hide," Adrian said. Not with anger, just with the factual certainty of someone who understood the difference between the two categories. "I don't. Come see her. That's the whole point, isn't it?" "Friday at 4, Sandra Yates said. "If that works." "It works." He handed the phone back to Tom and sat on the creeper for a moment, elbows on his knees looking at the concrete floor. Tom said from the counter, "You need a lawyer." "I have a call to make first." Adrian. "Tom." He looked up. "I know. I'll get there. First I need to make a call." I went outside to the side lot where the afternoon light was coming down hard and flat between the buildings, and he called Patricia Holloway. She answered on the second ring. "Someone filed a CPS inquiry," he said without identifying himself. She knew his voice by now. "I heard," she said. 30 minutes ago." "You heard?" "I have ears in places. It was Victor Hayes who filed it." A pause. "Not Damian Cole." Adrian absorbed this. "Cole pulled his statement," Holloway said. "Hayes apparently disagreed with that decision. He's taking a different approach. Using my daughter as a lever. That appears to be the strategy, yes." Her voice was precise and without excess emotion, which was not coldness. It was the professional management of information in a way that kept it useful. Mr. Brooks, I've been doing this for 17 years. A CPS inquiry filed within 72 hours of the original incident by one of the parties involved in that incident filed in apparent retaliation. That sequence is visible. Caseworkers see it. Sandra Yates. Good caseworker. Thorough. She'll come in without preconceptions and look at what's actually in front of her. Friday at 4. I know. I'd like to be there. Does that look defensive? Having a lawyer present. It can, Holloway said honestly. But you're a single father with no family support structure present facing a retaliatory filing from someone with a financial and reputational interest in undermining you. Having counsel present is appropriate. Sandra Yates will understand that. Okay. The goal is simple, Holloway said. Sandra Yates walks into that home. She sees a clean house, a well-fed child, a parent who is present and responsive and knows his daughter. She sees evidence of stability. She sees Mia. Mia does the rest. Mia doesn't know. How much do you want her to know? Adrian looked at the side lot, the cracked asphalt, a sparrow working at something near the drainage grate. Enough that she's not blindsided, not enough that she's worried. That's a difficult line. She's 8, he said. She can hold more than people think, but she shouldn't have to hold this. Tell her someone is coming to visit and make sure things are okay, Holloway said. She'll understand that. Kids who have been through real difficulty understand when adults are making sure they're safe. It tends not to frighten them the way it frightens people who haven't. Adrian thought about Mia at the enrollment desk watching the room. Thought about her on the bench, absolutely still. Yeah, he said. You're right. Friday at 4, Holloway said. I'll be there at 3:30. He picked Mia up at 3:15, the same as always. She got in, buckled up, looked at him in the rear-view mirror with the alert attention of someone who had learned to read her father's face the way other people read weather. What happened? She said. He drove for a block before answering. A woman is coming to visit us on Friday. She works for the county. Her job is to make sure kids are okay. Mia processed this. Like a social worker. Something like that. Are we in trouble? No. Someone who is in trouble made a complaint about us. The woman's job is to come see for herself whether the complaint is real. Is it real? No. She was quiet for a moment. He watched her in the mirror, the specific expression of a child doing serious thinking, the small furrow between her eyebrows that was in all its particulars exactly her mother's. So she'll come and see we're fine, and then it's over. That's how it works when everything's actually fine, he said, which it is. Should I clean my room? Your room is already clean. Thoroughly clean or just regular clean? It's clean, Mia. She considered. Gerald's eye might be an issue. Gerald's eye is not going to be an issue. He looks a little rough. He looks loved, Adrian said, which is what he is. She seemed to accept this. They drove another 2 blocks. Then she said, Is it because of the video? Yes. Victor Hayes. He glanced at the mirror. How do you know that? I heard you on the phone yesterday. Through the door. You didn't know I was awake. She paused. I'm sorry. I should have told you I was listening. Yeah, you should have. I know. She said it with genuine contrition, not the performed kind. Is Victor Hayes trying to take me away? No, he's trying to cause problems. There's a difference. Why would he do that? He already lost. Because people who do things they're not proud of don't always deal with it by becoming better. Adrian said. Sometimes they deal with it by trying to make the person who witnessed it look worse. Mia thought about this with visible seriousness for the rest of the drive home. He let her think. That was another thing he had learned: not every silence required filling. Sometimes thinking needed room. When he parked, she sat for a moment before unbuckling. Then she said, Dad, when the lady comes on Friday, can I tell her about Gerald's eye, about why it's missing? He looked at her. Because it's a good story, she said. It shows I'm not. It shows I take care of things. I understood what she was actually saying. That she wanted to contribute. that she wanted to help make this okay the way she knew how to, not by performing, not by pretending, but by being exactly what she was, which was herself, which was enough. "Yeah," he said. "Tell her about Gerald." Tom Mercer had a lawyer. Adrian had not known this because Tom Mercer had not, in 30 years of running a small auto shop, required the active services of a lawyer on a regular basis. But he had one, a man named Dale Pritchard, who had gone to school with Tom's brother and who handled the shop's occasional contracts and liability questions, and who it turned out had been watching the situation with Adrian develop over the past 72 hours, with the focused attention of someone who recognized what kind of thing it was. Tom brought it up on Thursday evening just before closing. "Dale called me," Tom said. He was wiping down the counter with the careful attention of a man who wipes down counters as a thinking activity rather than a cleaning one. "He's been following the video situation. He says the Hayes filing is weak. The basis is too thin and the timing is too obvious." "I have a lawyer," Adrian said. Tom stopped wiping. "Since when?" "Since Tuesday night." Tom looked at him for a moment. "The woman on the 9-to-1 video situation." "Patricia Holloway. She was already involved. Former students of Iron Valley are building a civil case." Tom set down the rag. "How deep are you in this?" "I'm a potential witness, not a plaintiff." "Adrian." Tom's voice was the voice he used when he was saying more than the words. The voice that had been for 11 years the closest approximation in Adrian's daily life to someone who gave a damn about the outcome of his days. "How much of this is going to land on me?" "As little as I can manage." "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest one I have right now." Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned on the counter and crossed his arms and looked at Adrian with the level gaze of 61 years of having decided what he thought about things. "You know what I've noticed about you in 11 years? And I mean this as a compliment because I've thought about how to say it and I think it's a compliment. Okay. You are the only person I have ever met who is completely the same whether you think someone is watching or not." Tom held his gaze. "Most people, there's a version they perform and a version they actually are. With you, it's just the same. Every time. In here, out there, when things are fine, when things are bad. Same." Adrian didn't say anything. "I just think," Tom said, "that a man like that is going to be all right, whatever comes, because he doesn't have to remember who he's pretending to be." The shop was quiet around them. The end of the day, the ordinary familiar smell of it, the radio off, the lights starting to change. "Tom," Adrian said. "Yeah." "Thank you." Tom picked up the rag and went back to wiping the counter. "Don't thank me. Go home to your daughter. And for the love of God, fix that cracked mirror on the truck before someone cites you for it." Marcus Webb arrived at 7:30 Friday morning. He had not called ahead, or rather he had called ahead in the sense that his text at 6:45 said, "Landing in 20, and then nothing further," because Marcus had never in his life considered that sufficient notice might require more information than the bare facts. I was standing in the driveway with a duffel bag over one shoulder when Adrian opened the door, and he looked exactly the way Marcus always looked, like something that had been built for a specific purpose and had been maintained to specification ever since. "You said you were fine," Marcus said. "I am fine. I'm here anyway." "I see that." Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then, "You look tired." "I've been tired for 8 years." "You look more tired than usual." "The CPS visit is today," Adrian said. "And I have a lawyer coming at 3:30 and a caseworker at 4 and an 11 million view video of me dropping 3 men on a mat that I did not consent to having filmed. And my daughter is upstairs deciding whether Gerald's missing eye is going to be a liability or an asset in the home visit." Marcus took this in. "What's Gerald?" "Stuffed rabbit, one-eyed." "Asset or liability?" "Asset," Adrian said. "Definitely asset." Marcus nodded once, the definitive nod of a man who accepts information and moves on. "Okay, what do you need?" "Breakfast." "Done. I cook or you cook?" "You cook," Adrian said. "I've seen you cook. Mia will have opinions about it, but she'll eat it." "I can make eggs." "Everyone can make eggs." "I make exceptional eggs." "That's what everyone says." Marcus went past him into the kitchen with the ease of someone who has been in enough unfamiliar places that unfamiliar doesn't really register anymore. And Adrian stood in the doorway for a moment and felt for the first time since Tuesday morning something in his chest that was not quite relief, but was in the same neighborhood. The particular feeling of not being entirely alone in a thing. Mia came downstairs at 7:50 and stopped on the bottom step. She looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at her. Marcus was 6'2" odd and had a face that had been described at various points in his life as intense, severe, and the face of a man who has seen things. He was standing at Adrian's stove making eggs with a kitchen towel over his shoulder and an expression of focused concentration. "Who are you?" Mia said, directly without alarm. Pure information gathering. "Marcus," he said without looking up from the pan. "Your dad and I served together." "In the military?" "Yes." She came off the step and sat at the table and watched him cook. "He doesn't talk about that." "I know." "Why not?" "Because he decided some things are better kept private," Marcus said. He slid eggs onto a plate and set it in front of her. "Your dad is a very private person." Mia looked at the eggs, then at Marcus. "These are excellent eggs." Marcus looked at Adrian across the kitchen. Adrian said nothing and poured his coffee. "Thank you." "Thank you," Marcus said to Mia. "Most people don't add the herbs," she said, examining the plate. "What are those gay chives and a little thyme?" "We have those in the cabinet. He doesn't usually use them." "I know," Marcus said. "I can tell by how old the containers are." Mia looked at her father with an expression that communicated clearly and without words. This person knows things about cooking that you do not. Adrian took a sip of coffee and said nothing. "Are you here because of the CPS thing?" Mia asked Marcus. Marcus looked at Adrian. Adrian set down his coffee. "I told you I'd tell you what you needed to know." "I know," she said. "I'm not upset. I just want to understand." She looked back at Marcus with the clear, direct gaze she used when she was being very serious. "He doesn't ask for help, so if you came, something made him need it." Marcus sat down across from her, which put them roughly at eye level with each other. "He didn't ask," Marcus said. "I came because I know when he needs someone here whether or not he asks." Mia considered this. "That's what friends are for," she said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "It is." She picked up her fork. "Okay," she said. "Good." She ate her eggs. Patricia Holloway arrived at 3:28, 2 minutes early, which Adrian had already assessed as characteristic. She was 51, with the composed energy of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by the complexity of the situations that arrived in her professional life, and she shook Adrian's hand with the grip of someone who thought handshakes communicated information and was correct about that. She took stock of the house in the way that lawyers take stock of things, not with the evaluative eye of the caseworker who was coming at 4, but with the tactical eye of someone pre-reading a situation she intended to manage effectively. "Nice place," she said. "It's a home," Adrian said. "There's a difference." She looked at him. A small, precise smile. "Yes, there is." Marcus had made himself useful by taking Mia to the bookstore 3 blocks away, which served the dual purpose of giving Mia a treat and giving Adrian space to confer with Holloway before the visit. Holloway sat at the kitchen table and put a folder in front of her. "Sandra Yates is thorough and fair-minded," she said. "I've dealt with her on 2 other cases. She will not be influenced by the video or by the public narrative. She will assess what she sees in this room." "Good," Adrian said. "She'll want to speak with Mia alone, briefly. That's standard. Are you comfortable with that?" "Yes." "Mia knows she can say whatever she wants." "She does." "Has she been coached?" "No." He looked at Holloway steadily. "She's been told the truth about what's happening. She'll say what she sees. Which is, that she lives in a home where she's safe and cared for and taken seriously," he said. "Because she does." Holloway made a small note. "The Hayes filing references the incident at Iron Valley as evidence of, and I'm quoting, a pattern of violent behavior and poor judgment in the presence of a minor." Adrian breathed evenly. "He's using the edited video," Holloway said. The version that begins with you on the mat. The version without the locked door. I know. Sandra Yates will have seen both. She looked up from the folder. I want to be transparent with you about the risk level here. It is low, but it is not zero. A caseworker, even a thorough and fair-minded one, is operating with a mandate that defaults to caution. If she sees anything that raises a question, anything at all, she is required to follow it. I understand. So if there's anything in this home in Mia's presentation in your interactions this afternoon that could be misread. There isn't, Adrian said. I need to know about it in advance. There isn't, he said again. Same tone. I have been raising my daughter alone for 4 years, Ms. Holloway. I have been the only person in her life responsible for every choice that affects her. I don't make decisions I can't stand behind. Holloway held his gaze for a moment. Then she closed the folder. Okay, she said. Marcus and Mia came back at 3:50. Mia had a new book. She had apparently selected it in under 3 minutes, which Marcus reported with the impressed expression of someone who had expected the process to take considerably longer and had revised his timeline accordingly. She sat on the couch with it and read, and Gerald was in his standard position in the crook of her arm, and the house had the feel of a Thursday ordinary, lived in the small evidence of a life being conducted normally and consistently in these specific rooms. Sandra Yates rang the bell at 4:02. She was mid-40s with practical shoes and a tablet in a blue case, and the alert, non-judgmental attentiveness of someone who had learned long ago to hold conclusions loosely until she had enough information to earn them. She shook Adrian's hand, acknowledged Holloway without surprise, and looked around the front room with the professional calm of someone doing a job they took seriously. Mr. Brooks, she said, thank you for having me. Of course. Her eyes had already found Mia, who was looking back at her from the couch with the same clear, direct gaze she used for everything. Hi, Mia said. Hi, Sandra Yates said. I'm Sandra. I'm Mia. She held up Gerald. This is Gerald. He only has one eye. Sandra Yates walked over and crouched down to Mia's level. What happened to the other one? It came off last spring. We don't know exactly when because nobody saw it happen. He just came down from his shelf one morning with one eye. She considered Gerald with affectionate seriousness. Dad says he looks loved. I think he looks distinguished. I'd say distinguished, Sandra Yates said. That's what I told Dad. He said it was the same thing. Mia tilted her head. Are you the person who's going to make sure I'm okay? Sandra Yates paused, the slight pause of someone recalibrating in real time. Yes, she said after a moment. That's my job. Okay, Mia said. I'm okay, but you should check anyway. That's what checking is for. Sandra Yates looked at Adrian over her shoulder. Adrian looked back at her with the expression of a man who has nothing to add. The home visit lasted 90 minutes. Sandra Yates moved through the house with the composed thoroughness of her profession. The kitchen, the bedrooms, the bathroom, the small yard, out back where Adrian had put a wooden table and 2 chairs, and spent occasional evenings reading when Mia was asleep. She asked questions in the matter-of-fact way of someone who had asked all of these questions many times, and understood both their purpose and their limits. She spoke with Adrian for 30 minutes with Holloway present about the incident, about his history, about Mia's school, and her friends and her life. Then she asked to speak with Mia alone for 10 minutes. Adrian went to the kitchen. Marcus was there leaning against the counter with his arms crossed and the patient stillness of someone accustomed to waiting for things to develop. 10 minutes is normal, Holloway said from the table. I know, Adrian said. High Mata coffee because it was something to do with his hands. He made it the same way he always did black, no sugar, the kind that doesn't apologize. He made enough for everyone and didn't ask if anyone wanted any. He just set the mugs on their table and sat down. Marcus picked one up. Holloway picked one up. None of them spoke. The house was quiet, except for the low murmur from the front room, not distinct enough to make out words, just the tone of it. Mia's voice clear and unworried. Sandra Yates's voice steady and calm. the sound of an ordinary conversation between a woman doing her job and a child who was not afraid of being known. At 11 minutes, Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway. "She wants to talk to you again," she said to Adrian. She looked completely unbothered. "Also, can I have a snack? What do you want?" "Apple." He got up, went to the counter, sliced an apple with the muscle memory of 1,000 afternoons, and handed her the plate. She took it back to the couch. He went to the front room. Sandra Yates was standing near the window, not a threatening position. The position of someone who needed a moment to organize her thoughts before saying them. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I want to ask you something directly." "Go ahead." "Your daughter in the 10 minutes we spent together told me 4 things that I want to share with you." She looked at him with the focused attention of someone about to deliver something that was careful and important. First, she said she feels safe at home. Second, she said she feels that you listen to her. Third, she said that when something hard happens, you tell her the truth about it at the level she can understand. Sandra paused. "And fourth, she said, and I'm going to quote this because I want you to hear the exact words she said, 'My dad is strong, but he's never scary. There's a difference.'" Adrian was quiet. "She's 8 years old," Sandra Yates said. "Yes, she told me that, and then she told me about a stuffed rabbit who lost an eye, and why she considers that a sign of character rather than damage." Sandra looked at him. "Mr. Brooks, I have been doing this job for 14 years. I have been in a lot of homes. I have talked to a lot of children. And I can tell you without qualification that a child who speaks about her parent the way Mia speaks about you has not been harmed by that parent. That is not a conclusion I reach easily or often." Adrian held himself very still. "I'll file my report on Monday," Sandra said. "It will reflect what I found, which is a stable home, a well-cared-for child, and a parent who is present in all the ways that matter." She paused. "The filing that prompted this visit will be noted in my report as inconsistent with the evidence. I'll leave it to others to draw the appropriate conclusions from that." "Thank you," Adrian said. "Thank your daughter," Sandra Yates said. "She's exceptional." She picked up her tablet and her bag and shook his hand and walked to the front door. At the door she stopped. She turned back. "The video," she said. "I watched both of them, the edited version and the full version." She looked at him steadily. "You asked to leave 7 times. I counted." He hadn't known she'd been counting. He hadn't known he'd asked 7 times. 7 times, she said again, and then she left. Marcus stayed for dinner. He made it because now that Mia had endorsed his cooking ability, she appeared to consider this a settled fact about the household, and had conveyed this to Marcus by putting his name on the rotation board that she had apparently been maintaining on a corner of the refrigerator whiteboard without Adrian's awareness. Adrian looked at the whiteboard. It said, "Monday Dad, Tuesday Dad, Wednesday Dad, Thursday Dad, Friday Marcus, Saturday Dad, Sunday Dad." "When did you make this?" he asked Mia. "This afternoon," she said. "While Sandra was here. I needed something to do." She looked at the board. "I was going to put Dad on Friday too, but Marcus makes the eggs so." "Marcus is leaving tomorrow," Adrian said. Mia looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at his hands. "You don't have to," she said. "I have to get back," Marcus said. "For how long?" "Few weeks probably." She processed this. "Can you come back for the Saturday after that?" Adrian said. "I'm asking," she said with the precise reasonableness of someone who considers a direct question to be a perfectly appropriate response to an uncertain situation. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Yeah, the Saturday after next." "Okay." She went back to her homework. "Then I'll adjust the board." Adrian looked at Marcus. Marcus shrugged with the slightly helpless expression of a man who had operated in difficult environments for 20 years and had just been managed by a third grader. Dinner was pasta. This time, not Tuesday spaghetti. Marcus's version, which involved a different construction of the sauce that Mia studied with focused interest, and then declared scientifically superior, in a tone that she probably did not realize was exactly the tone her father used when he had reached a conclusion he was going to commit to. After dinner, Mia went to bed. Marcus and Adrian sat at the kitchen table with the last of the coffee and the house quiet around them. "She's remarkable," Marcus said. "I know. She's you, the way she reads rooms, the way she holds still." "She's her mother too," Adrian said. Marcus nodded. He knew better than to say anything to that, not because it was forbidden territory, but because it was territory that had its own gravity and didn't need help. "The Hayes thing is going to escalate," Marcus said after a moment. "I know." Cole pulled back. "But Hayes is still in it. And Logan Pierce is still writing the video traffic. He hasn't posted anything new, but he hasn't gone quiet either." "Logan's scared," Adrian said. "His two options are doubling down or going quiet. And going quiet means the original post stands without support. He's figuring out which one costs less." "And Hayes? Hayes never wanted to run a martial arts program," Adrian said. "Hayes wanted the thing the program gave him, the authority, the structure, the ability to decide who mattered." He looked at his coffee. He filed the CPS complaint because losing in front of that camera took all of that away, and he needed to restore some version of it. Taking my daughter would have done that, or trying to. It didn't work. "It didn't work today," Adrian said. Marcus looked at him. "He's not done," Adrian said. "People like that don't stop. They change the approach." "What does that mean for you?" "It means I stop hoping this goes away on its own." He set down the mug. "Monday I call Holloway and find out what the civil case needs. If the former students are building something, I need to know what it looks like and whether my testimony matters to it." "It matters," Marcus said. "Then I figure out what that costs Mia and whether I can manage it. And if you can't manage it alone..." Adrian looked at him. Marcus raised an eyebrow, the look of a man waiting for a different answer than the one he was about to get. Adrian didn't give a different answer, but he also didn't give the usual one. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said with the careful precision of someone who did not give ground on this kind of thing easily, "I'll tell you if I need you." Marcus accepted this. It was from Adrian Brooks, the equivalent of a lengthy assurance. "Okay," Marcus said. "You can adjust the board before you go. Put yourself on Monday too if you want." "Monday is too far." "Then leave it." Adrian got up, took the mugs to the sink. He stood for a moment with his hands on the edge of the counter looking at the back window, the street below the ordinary yellow lamplight. "Marcus." "Yeah." "She said I was strong but never scary. You heard that." "I heard it." That's the whole thing." His voice was even, factual. The voice of someone reporting the most important thing they know. "That's the thing I've been trying to get right for 8 years. Everything else, the video, Hayes, the internet, all of it, it's noise. That is the thing." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You got it right," he said. Adrian dried his hands on the dish towel and hung it back on the rack. "Yeah," he said. "So far." He turned off the kitchen light. He walked down the hall the way he always did in the dark without turning on a single lamp, knowing the house by feel and by memory, and by the specific knowledge of a man who has spent years making the same path his own. He stopped at Mia's door. 3 inches, not more. He stood there and listened to her breathe. In the morning, Sandra Yates would write her report. In the morning, Victor Hayes would wake up to the information that the CPS inquiry had not produced the outcome he had needed. In the morning, 11 million people would still have seen 61 seconds that they would carry with them in different ways, and more people would see it still, and the story would keep moving through the world in the way that true things move, not cleanly, not quickly, but with the persistence of something that has actual weight. But right now, it was night, and Mia was breathing, and the house was quiet. And Adrian Brooks stood in the hallway of his life with everything he had built and everything he had protected and everything he had chosen, and let himself for one still moment feel the whole weight of it. Then he pulled the door back to 3 inches, not more, and walked to his room. Sandra Yates filed her report on Monday morning at 9:17. Adrian knew the time because Patricia Holloway called him at 9:22 and said, "It's done," in the tone of someone who has been watching a clock and can now stop watching it. I was under a Dodge Ram when the call came through, and he rolled out the same way he had for the CPS call the week before, and Tom was already at the bay entrance holding the phone with the same expression. The expression of a man who had decided that his role in all of this was to make sure Adrian stayed connected to the world outside the undercarriage of whatever vehicle currently required his attention. "Report is clean," Holloway said. "Completely." She noted the filing as inconsistent with the evidence and flagged the timing relative to the original incident. She used the phrase, "apparent retaliatory intent," in the supplemental notes. Does that go anywhere? It goes into the file. Whether it becomes something larger depends on what Victor Hayes does next. A pause. "How are you?" "Working," he said. "Good. Keep working. Routine is protective." Another pause, this one with something different behind it. "Mr. Brooks, I need to speak with you about the civil case, not as a potential witness, about something that's changed." He leaned against the truck. "Changed how?" "We have 12 former students now. 12. 3 of them were minors at the time of the incidents they're describing." Her voice was careful and precise in the way it got when the information it was carrying had significant weight. 2 of them reached out because of your video, specifically because they saw your daughter on that bench and it matched something they remembered from their own time at Iron Valley. Adrian was quiet. "There is a pattern here," Holloway said. "A consistent one. The targeting of new students, the isolation, the use of the sparring evaluation as a mechanism of control, the filming." She stopped. "Logan Pierce has been doing this for 2 years. The filming. He has a library of material. Some of it has been posted under different accounts, not his main one. We found 6 alternate accounts. The content it's not illegal, most of it, but it's systematic. It's deliberate humiliation, documented and distributed." "How old was the youngest?" Adrian said. 12, Holloway said. "The youngest incident we've confirmed." He stood very still in Tom's garage. "Mr. Brooks," Holloway said, and her voice shifted in a way he had not heard from her before. Not unprofessional, but human in a way that the professional register had been managing. "I want to ask you something that isn't strictly relevant to the legal case." "Ask it." "When you were in that room with your daughter on the bench at the moment, you chose to engage, rather than continue trying to leave. What were you thinking?" He considered this. Not the tactical thinking, not the read of the room and the geometry and the decision tree. Underneath all of that. "I was thinking that she was going to remember this," he said. "Whatever happened in the next 60 seconds, she was going to carry it. And I needed to decide what it was going to be." Holloway was quiet. "I needed her to see that there are things worth standing for," he said. "And that standing for them doesn't have to mean losing yourself." A long silence on the line. Then, "I'm going to need your formal statement, when you're ready." "Tell me when and where," he said. "End of the week. My office." "I'll be there." He handed the phone back to Tom and stood for a moment in the bay entrance, looking at the street. Tom said nothing. Adrian went back under the Dodge Ram. Tug. Victor Hayes made his next move on Tuesday. He did it through a sports media blogger named Craig Fenwick, who ran a website called Combat Truth, with 40,000 monthly readers and an appetite for contrarian narratives about viral martial arts stories. Fenwick published a piece at 11 in the morning with the headline, "The Iron Valley Video, What Nobody Is Telling You." Marcus texted Adrian a link at 11:15 with the single word, "Here." Adrian read it on his lunch break, sitting in the cab of his truck in the parking lot behind the garage with a sandwich he was not eating. The piece was careful in the way that certain kinds of dishonesty are careful. It never stated outright falsehoods that could be disproven. Instead, it assembled a narrative from selective facts and pointed questions and the specific implication of things that were never directly said. It described Adrian as a man with a classified military background that raises serious questions. It described the encounter as a situation that may have been less spontaneous than the viral footage suggests. It quoted anonymously a source close to the facility, who said that Adrian had displayed an unusual level of aggression during the earlier class portion of the evening. The anonymous source was Victor Hayes. Adrian did not need anyone to tell him that. What the piece did not mention: the locked door, the repeated requests to leave, Mia on the bench. The full video. Sandra Yates's report. The 12 former students. The 6 alternate accounts Logan Pierce had been running for 2 years. It also described Adrian in one precise and calculated paragraph as a man whose daughter may have been present at multiple incidents of his choosing. A sentence that said nothing specific and implied everything. Adrian finished reading. He sat in the truck for 4 minutes. He ate half the sandwich. Then he called Patricia Holloway. "I saw it," she said before he could speak. "The anonymous source is Hayes." "Almost certainly." "The paragraph about Mia." "I know," she said. "It's designed to plant a seed without being actionable. He knows what he's doing." "He's done this before," Adrian said. "The pattern in the filings suggests yes. This isn't the first time he's used this kind of lateral pressure against someone." "Who else?" A pause. "There are 2 names in our case file, former adult students who left the program after similar treatment. One of them received an anonymous negative review of his small business that appeared online within 2 weeks of his leaving. The other, a woman, had a social services inquiry filed against her regarding her foster child. Inquiry was closed immediately. But it happened." Adrian absorbed this. "He has a method," Holloway said. "He identifies the most vulnerable thing about a person, and he applies pressure to it." "My daughter." "Yes. He's going to keep coming. Until something stops him," Holloway said. "Which is why the civil case matters. Not just for you. For the people he's done this to before, and the people he would do it to after." He looked out the windshield at the parking lot. The ordinary afternoon. A woman loading groceries 3 spaces over a pigeon, working at a crack in the asphalt. "What does formal testimony do?" he asked. "Practically. Walk me through it." "It establishes pattern," Holloway said. "Your testimony covers the original incident in detail: the locked door, the threats, the filming, the presence of a child. Combined with the accounts of the other 12, it builds a picture of conduct that is not isolated but systematic. That matters for liability. It also matters for any potential licensing review of the facility. Licensing. Martial arts facilities in Virginia require certification. Instructor misconduct documented systematic involving minors is grounds for review. Hayes could lose his certification. Cole too, potentially, depending on what's established about his knowledge and oversight. And Logan Pierce. Logan Pierce, Holloway said, is a separate matter. The filming, particularly the 6 alternate accounts and the content library, is being reviewed by someone who handles issues outside my lane. I can't speak to that in detail, but it is being reviewed." Adrian sat with this. The someone outside Holloway's lane had a specific shape in his mind, the shape of people he had worked with in a former life who handled things that didn't fit neatly into civil law. He didn't ask about it. Some things you don't ask about when the answer doesn't change what you do next. "I'll be at your office Friday," he said. "Bring everything you remember," she said. "Every detail, the sequence, the timing, the specific words. Write it down before Friday so you're not reconstructing from memory in the room." "I know how to give a statement," he said. A brief pause. "Of course you do," she said. And she said it without condescension, as a simple acknowledgement of a fact that she should have already adjusted for. He told Mia that evening. Not everything. The measure he had established enough that she wasn't blindsided, not enough that she carried what she shouldn't. He told her that someone was trying to cause more problems, that it was because they were embarrassed and looking for ways to push back, and that he was working with the lawyer to address it. Mia listened to all of this with the focused attention she gave important information. Then she said, "Is it Victor Hayes again?" "Yes." "What did he do?" "He told a reporter some things that weren't true, or weren't the whole truth, which is almost the same thing. About you. About the situation, and by implication about you." She thought about this. "What did he say about me?" "He implied that you weren't safe with me." The expression on her face was not fear. It was not distress. It was something more like the expression of someone who has just encountered a mathematical error, so obvious that the offense of it is primarily intellectual. "That's ridiculous," she said. "I know. Anyone who's talked to me for 5 minutes would know that's ridiculous. Sandra Yates talked to you for 10 minutes. Adrian said. Exactly. She crossed her arms. She knows. She does. So what does it matter what Victor Hayes says? He looked at his daughter across the dinner table, the earnest precision of her. The 8-year-old certainty that truth was a simple machine that worked predictably if you operated it correctly, and he felt the familiar pull between wanting to protect her from the messier version of the world, and knowing that protecting her from it was not the same thing as preparing her for it. Because truth and public perception are different things, he said. And sometimes, not always not in the end, but sometimes in the middle perception does damage before the truth catches up. She thought about this with visible effort. Like when Tyler Martinez told everyone I eat in alphabetical order, she said finally. Exactly like that. But then Priya found out it's by temperature and told people, and now half the class does it too. That's the truth catching up, he said. How long did it take? With Tyler, about 3 weeks. Is this going to take 3 weeks? Probably longer, Adrian said. She made a face. I know, he said. That's a really inefficient system, she said. It is. It's also the one we have. She uncrossed her arms and picked up her fork. Okay, she said. Then we wait. We do more than wait, Adrian said. We work. I give my statement to Ms. Holloway. The other people who were hurt by the same people work with her too. We put the truth in a form that's harder to avoid. A legal form. Yes. And then we see. She ate for a moment. Then, Dad, why didn't you ever tell me you were in the military? He had been expecting this. Not today specifically, but since Marcus had said it in the kitchen 4 mornings ago, with the uncomplicated directness of someone who hadn't considered there was reason to be indirect about it. He had been waiting for Mia to arrive at the question in her own time. Because it was a long time ago, he said. And because the things I did then are part of what made me who I am now. But they're not who I am now. I didn't want you to have an idea of me that was mostly about something that's already finished. Did you fight in real fights? Not like last week. Like wars. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Were you scared? The same question she had asked him twice now in 2 different contexts, with the same fundamental interest, not in fear itself, but in how a person she trusted handled it. Yes, he said. What did you do when you were scared? I focused on the thing that needed doing, he said. There's usually something specific, something right in front of you that you can address. So you address that, and while you're addressing it, the fear has somewhere to go. She nodded slowly. Not the nod of a child accepting an adult answer, but the nod of someone integrating new information into an existing understanding. Is that why you told me to stand by the bench? She said. That night. Is that what you were doing? Focusing on the thing right in front of you? He looked at her. You were scared for me, she said. So you made me the thing to focus on. He was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, he said. That's exactly it. She considered this with the gravity of someone to whom this has been given as a gift and who wants to hold it correctly. Okay, she said finally. I understand. She went back to her dinner, and Adrian sat across from her and thought that whatever happened next, Hayes, the civil case, the internet, the Fenwick article, and its anonymous sources and its careful implications. Whatever it brought, he had gotten this right. The conversation. This one. Just now. He had gotten it right. Chate. He wrote his statement Wednesday evening. Mia was in bed, the house quiet, the kitchen table clear. He sat with a yellow legal pad, actual paper, actual pen, the way he had always composed important things, and wrote from the beginning. He wrote what he had seen when he walked into the room. He wrote the warm-up class, and Damien's corrections, and Victor's surveillance of his movements. He wrote the conversation at the water break, and the specific words Damien had used, not because he was angry, but because the specific words were evidence. He wrote the locked door, the camera, the blocking of the exit. He wrote the moment he had made the decision. He wrote it carefully, and he wrote it true, because the whole point of a statement is not what you felt, but what actually happened in sequence, without interpretation. You give the facts, and you let the facts do what facts do. He wrote for 2 hours. At the end, he put the pen down and looked at what he had written. 14 pages, small handwriting, every detail he could recover. Then he turned to the last clean page and wrote one more thing. Not for the statement, not for Holloway, for himself. He wrote, "She asked me why I was strong." He wrote, "I told her it was to keep the people I love safe." He wrote, "I think that's true. I also think it's not the whole truth." He wrote, "The whole truth is that strength without direction is just force." I've known men with more physical capability than I have, who were the most dangerous people in any room they entered, not because of what they could do to enemies, but because of what they could do to the people closest to them. Because force without intention is a fire with no fireplace. He wrote, Reed used to say, "The discipline isn't in the training. The discipline is in the choosing. Every day, over and over, choosing what the training is for." He wrote, "I choose Mia. I choose the people who came to that facility trying to learn something and got humiliation instead. I choose the 12 who were quiet because they thought they were alone." He wrote, "I choose the right use." He put the pen down. He folded the last page separately from the statement pages and put it in the cabinet above the refrigerator behind the envelope, with the crayon sun where it would not be found by anyone except himself. Then he went to bed. Thursday came and went. The Fenwick article circulated among the subset of the internet that circulates. Fenwick articles, and the comments were, what comments always are, a percentage convinced, a larger percentage dismissive, a smaller percentage with actual questions. The full video kept running its own counter-narrative without any assistance. Holloway sent him a text that said simply, "Ratio is fine. Don't engage." He didn't engage. Marcus called Thursday evening. "Hayes gave another interview," Marcus said. "Different outlet, smaller. He's doubling down on the aggression narrative. Let him. People are asking why Damian Cole hasn't said anything. Because Damian Cole pulled his statement and issued a neutral resolution notice and is apparently trying to figure out who he actually is," Adrian said, "which is more than Hayes is doing." "You believe that about Cole?" Adrian thought about the phone call, about Damian's voice going flat at the mention of Mia on the bench, about the sister who had said things Damian wasn't going to repeat. "I believe he's somewhere in the middle," he said, "which is further along than Hayes. And Logan. Logan's quiet, which means he's scared." "Scared of what?" "The alternate accounts," Adrian said. "Whatever's being reviewed outside Holloway's lane, he knows it's there." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You knew when you were in that room, didn't you, that this was going to be more than a sparring incident?" "I knew the second Damian announced the tradition at the end of the kids' class," Adrian said. "I knew what that room was. I'd been in rooms like it before, different context. Rooms where someone needs to demonstrate authority in order to maintain it. Those rooms always go the same way." "So why did you stay?" "Because Mia asked if we could come back." The simplest possible answer. Marcus was quiet. "She was watching a 12-year-old girl land a clean block and smile," Adrian said. "And that look on her face, the hope in it, I wasn't willing to take that away from her without knowing for certain whether the place was worth salvaging or not. And then it wasn't. And then it clearly wasn't. You couldn't have known it would escalate the way it did." "No," Adrian said. "But I knew what I was capable of handling if it did, so I made the judgment call." A pause. "I'd make the same one. Even knowing the video, the CPS haze all of it. Even knowing," Adrian said, "because the alternative is standing in a locked room watching my daughter watch me do nothing, and that's not an option." Marcus said nothing for a moment. Then, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. When have I given you a different kind? Fair?" Marcus paused. "Are you okay?" Not the version of the question he'd asked before. Not the logistical version. The other version. The one underneath. Adrian held the phone. He thought about the legal pad on the kitchen table, the 14 pages, and the one extra page behind the envelope in the cabinet. "I'm processing," he said. "That's not the same as okay." "No," Adrian said. "It's not, but it's honest." Marcus accepted this. It was more than he usually got, and he knew it. "The Saturday after next," he said. "Yeah. I'll make eggs. Mia's already adjusted the board." "Good," Marcus said. "Then it's settled." He drove to Holloway's office on Friday at 2. He gave the statement. All 14 pages in the precise and deliberate manner of someone who has done this before in different rooms for different purposes, with the same fundamental requirement. Say what happened in order without embellishment. Holloway listened. Her paralegal took notes. At various points, Holloway stopped him and asked him to be more specific. The exact position in the room, the exact words, the exact sequence of events in the 61 seconds. He was specific. At the end, Holloway looked at the notes for a moment and then looked at him. "I want to ask you something that's going to sound like a strange question," she said. "Ask it. You had multiple opportunities to end this situation at a lower level of escalation, before the locks, during the class, at the water break." She looked at him steadily. "Why didn't you leave earlier?" He had known this question was coming. He had thought about his answer. "Because Mia was enrolled," he said. "Her first class was the next Tuesday. If I left under pressure, if I walked out of that room because the instructors made it uncomfortable. The message I sent to the people running it was that pressure worked on me, and I would have had to bring her back into that environment. So you stayed to assess." "I stayed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, for her sake." "And what you understood was that it was exactly what it looked like," he said. "A system that used intimidation as a currency. And once I understood that the decision about whether to bring her back was made, the only thing left was to leave. Which they prevented." "Which they prevented," he said. Holloway made a final note. She put the cap on her pen. She looked at him with the expression of someone who has assembled a complete picture and is now measuring it against what she had expected to find. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I want to tell you something that is personal rather than professional, and I want you to take it as such." "Okay. I have been doing this work for 17 years, she said. "Civil liability, institutional misconduct, the specific ugliness of people who use authority to harm people who trust them. I have seen a great many situations that looked from the outside like something simple and turned out to be something else entirely." She paused. "Your situation is unusual in this. It actually is what it looks like. A man who walked into a room with his daughter and refused to be made into an example of what happens to people who don't submit to a particular hierarchy, and then refused to use what happened to him for anything except the truth." He held her gaze. "That matters," she said. "Not in the legal filing. In here." She touched the folder. "And in other places." He didn't say anything. "The people who were quiet," she said, "came forward because of what they saw in that video. And what they saw wasn't 61 seconds of a man defeating 3 black belts. Do you know what they said they saw? No. They said they saw someone who didn't need to win." She looked at him steadily. "They said they saw someone who just wanted to get his daughter home. And they recognized that feeling, the wanting to just be done, to just leave, to just not have to fight the room anymore because they had felt it, and they had not had your capability to answer it." He was quiet for a long time. "They came forward for themselves," he said finally. "I don't want to be the reason. They came forward for themselves," Holloway agreed. "But you opened the door, and that matters, whether you want it to or not." He looked at the folder on her desk. 14 pages in his handwriting, 12 names on the case file, a 12-year-old who had been the youngest. "What happens next?" he asked. "We file next week," Holloway said. "The civil complaint. Iron Valley Martial Arts Center, Damian Cole, Victor Hayes, Logan Pierce. Pattern of conduct negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and in Logan's case, specifically, invasion of privacy and distribution of content without consent." "How long does it take?" "Months, possibly over a year." She looked at him directly. "There will be more noise, more of what Hayes is doing, more attempts to reframe the narrative. It will not be quiet." He thought about the 14 years of quiet he had built. The coffee in the dark before 4:15, the crayon envelope, the 3-inch door. He thought about Mia's reading response in his shirt pocket. Sometimes the right thing is hard, even when you did it right. Okay, he said. Okay. File it, he said. Do what needs to be done. He picked Mia up at 3:15. She got in the truck and buckled her seatbelt and said before he could start the engine, "How did the meeting go?" "Good. We're moving forward with the legal case." "Against all three of them." "All three." She nodded with the gravity of a small person who understands that gravity is appropriate. "Good." He started the truck. "Dad," she said as he pulled out. "Yeah." "You know how you said that truth is slower than perception, sometimes?" "Yeah. And that sometimes there's a middle part where perception does damage before truth catches up." "Yeah." "Are we in the middle part?" He drove for a moment. He thought about Sandra Yates counting 7 times, about Marcus on the phone, about Holloway and the 12 names and the one who was 12 years old, about Damien's voice going quiet and Hayes' anonymous source and Logan Pierce's 6 alternate accounts, about the statement on the yellow legal pad and the extra page folded separately behind the crayon envelope, about the right use. "Yeah," he said. "We're in the middle part." She looked out the window. "How long does the middle part last?" "Long enough," he said. "But it ends." He looked at her in the rearview mirror, the dark, direct eyes. "The foot always slightly off the edge, always ready to go somewhere. It always ends," he said, "when enough people see the truth clearly enough that the perception can't hold anymore." She thought about this. "Okay," she said. She went back to her book. He drove them home through the ordinary. Virginia afternoon, the same streets, the same houses, the same cracked mirror on the left side of the truck that he still hadn't fixed, and that Tom kept reminding him about, and the whole middle part of the story, moving around them with its noise and its weight, and its slow, persistent turning toward whatever came next. He drove his daughter home. That was still the thing. That was still in all of it the only thing. The middle part lasted 11 months. Holloway had said months, possibly over a year, and she had been right in the way that people who have done something long enough are right. Not because they can predict specifics, but because they understand the shape of things. 11 months of depositions and counterfilings and media cycles, and the particular grinding persistence of a legal process that moves the way geology moves, slow and enormous and inevitable. Victor Hayes never stopped. That was the thing about Hayes that Adrian had understood from the beginning and that proved accurate down to its particulars. He gave 4 more interviews across 6 months, each one smaller than the last, as the outlets willing to run his narrative contracted in direct proportion to the expanding public record. He filed a second complaint, not CPS this time, a workplace harassment claim, against a version of events so distant from what had actually occurred, that Holloway's response filing was, in her words, almost recreational to write. He left anonymous comments on news articles. He maintained, with the specific devotion of someone whose identity had become entirely organized around a single grievance, the position that he was the wronged party. The civil complaint did what civil complaints do. It moved. It gathered. It brought 17 depositions and 240 pages of documentation and the testimony of 14 former students. 2 more had come forward in the months following the initial filing, and it arrived eventually at a settlement conference in the 3rd week of October, 11 months after Adrian Brooks had walked into Iron Valley Martial Arts Center, carrying his daughter's backpack with a stuffed rabbit visible through the half-open zipper. Howe was not in the room for the settlement. He didn't need to be. Holloway was there. The 14 were represented. Adrian had given everything he had to give, and it was in the record, and the record had done its work. He spent the morning of the settlement conference replacing the timing belt on a Toyota Corolla that Tom had been putting off since February, and Tom brought him coffee at 10 and stood at the bay entrance and said nothing, which was the right thing. Holloway called at 2:17. "It's done," she said. The settlement included financial compensation to the 14 former students. It included the surrender of Iron Valley Martial Arts Center's facility license. It included a provision specifically barring Logan Pierce from operating any social media account in connection with a martial arts instruction business for a period of 5 years, which was not everything Adrian had hoped for in that regard, but was something, and the something outside Holloway's lane had produced its own separate result that she mentioned only briefly, and that Adrian did not ask her to elaborate on. Damian Cole had separated himself from the other two defendants 8 months into the process. He had retained separate counsel. He had cooperated with the plaintiff's discovery requests in ways that Victor Hayes had not. His final settlement terms were distinct from Hayes's and Pierce's, and while Holloway could not discuss the specifics, she said, with the precise economy of someone choosing words carefully, he made different choices at the end than he made at the beginning. That was noted. Victor Hayes's instructor certification was revoked. That one Holloway said plainly without embellishment because it required none. Adrian sat in the cab of his truck in Tom's parking lot with the phone in his hand after the call ended, and he looked at the street for a long time. 11 months. 14 people who had been quiet because they thought they were alone. The truth in the form the world could not look away from. I thought about what Holloway had told him in her office, that the 14 had not come forward because of 61 seconds of a man defeating 3 black belts. They had come forward because they had seen someone who just wanted to get his daughter home. He thought about that for a long time. Then he went back inside and finished the timing belt. He told Mia that evening. She was at the kitchen table doing homework 6th grade math now, which she approached with the same systematic precision she brought to everything. Gerald propped against the napkin holder in his customary position, one-eyed and attentive. Adrian sat across from her. She looked up from the worksheet. "It's over," he said. She held her pencil and looked at him with the dark, direct eyes that were her mother's and the stillness that was his. All of it. The legal part, all of it. What happened to them? He told her in the measured way he always told her things, the truth, at the level she needed, without the parts that would only be weight she didn't need to carry. She listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said, "Victor Hayes lost his certification." "Yes. He can't teach anymore. Not with that certification, no." She thought about this. He watched her face move through the information, not with satisfaction, not with the particular pleasure of someone who wanted to see a person destroyed. With the careful, serious evaluation of someone deciding what to feel about a complicated outcome. "Is that enough?" she said finally. He considered the question with the respect it deserved. "It's what the system could do," he said, "which is different from enough. But it's real. It changes something concrete for the people who were hurt." She nodded slowly. "And the 14 people, they got something. Not everything they deserved, but something real." She looked at Gerald, at the pencil in her hand, at the math worksheet with its neat rows of problems half completed. "Dad," she said. "Yeah. Do you think any of them, the 3 instructors, do you think they actually understand what they did wrong?" He thought about Damian's phone call. The sister who had said things Damian wouldn't repeat. The flat voice and the word, "sorry," and the thing that had come out from underneath the professional register when he'd mentioned Mia on the bench. "One of them might be getting there," he said. "The other 2, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not." He looked at her steadily. "That's their work to do, not ours." She absorbed this. "Okay," she said. She picked up her pencil. Then she put it down again. "Dad, I want to ask you something." "Ask it." "Do you regret going there that night?" He held her gaze. 11 months. 14 people. The settlement. The license. The certified revocation. The legal pad in his handwriting. The extra page behind the crayon envelope. All of it. And Mia across the table from him, 9 years old now, asking the question with the full seriousness of someone who understood that the answer mattered. "No," he said. "Even with everything it cost." "What did it cost us?" he said. "Really, specifically." She thought about it. It was scary sometimes. Yes. It was loud. The internet stuff. Yes. And you had to give a lot of statements and go to a lot of meetings. Yes. And Victor Hayes was mean about us. He was. She was quiet for a moment. "But Sandra Yates came," she said slowly. And she saw we were fine. And she wrote it down officially. She turned the pencil over in her fingers. And 14 people aren't alone anymore. He waited. And I know more about you now, she said. The military part. The Colonel Reed part. Why you move the way you do. She looked up at him. I think I know you better than I did before all of it. He looked at his daughter for a long, still moment. Then no, he said. I don't regret it. She nodded once, the final nod, the one that meant the accounting was complete. She picked up her pencil and went back to the worksheet. He made dinner. 3 weeks after the settlement, Adrian bought Iron Valley Martial Arts Center. He had not planned this, or rather, he had not allowed himself to plan it. There is a difference between a thing you have not thought about and a thing you have thought about carefully and decided not to name until you know whether it's possible. He had been thinking about it since the first Saturday morning he had taken Mia to the park near their house and worked with her on the basics. He had promised how to stand, how to fall, how to use what you have without losing what you are. She had learned fast. Of course she had. But more than the learning, he had watched her face across those Saturday mornings and seen something that had been there all along, but had been waiting for the right container. The specific joy of a person discovering that they are more capable than they knew. That was what the facility could have been. What it should have been. He called the building owner, not the academy. The building itself, which had been owned by a separate party who had been watching the legal situation with the wary attention of a landlord who understands that the business in his property is about to stop being that business. They reached an agreement. He called Marcus. Marcus said, finally, which was not a word Adrian had expected. You knew I was thinking about it. I knew you were thinking about it the week after the settlement conference, Marcus said. Probably before. I just waited. Why didn't you say anything? Because you had to get there on your own, Marcus said. You always have to get there on your own. It's one of your most exhausting qualities. Thanks. I'm serious. It's exhausting, and it's also why you get there correctly. A pause. What are you going to call it? I have an idea, Adrian said. He had. The sign went up on a Thursday morning in late November. Tom closed the garage for 2 hours and came over with coffee. Marcus had driven down the night before and was there in the parking lot in the early morning cold, with his hands in his coat pockets, looking at the new sign with the expression of someone who is working hard not to show that they are moved. It said, Safe Strength Academy. Below the name in smaller letters, strength exists to protect, not to control. The first rule on the wall. Inside the only rule on the wall, because one clear rule is worth more than 20 complicated ones. Said the same thing. Adrian stood in the parking lot and looked at the sign for a moment. Then he went inside to get ready for the first class. The junior program launched that Saturday. Mia was in it. She was not treated differently from the other students, which was both his policy and her firm personal preference, stated clearly and in advance. I don't want to be the teacher's kid. I just want to learn. He had agreed. She learned. She was good. She was going to be better. There were 11 children in that first Saturday class, ranging from 7 to 14. They were awkward and uncertain, and some of them fell down during the warm-up in ways that would have been in a different room cause for laughter at their expense. In this room, the other students helped them up, because that was the other rule not written on the wall, demonstrated from the first moment of the first class, modeled by the instructor, and understood immediately. You help people up. That's what the training is for. Not to put people down. To be strong enough, capable enough, grounded enough, that when someone near you falls, you are in a position to help them stand. Mia landed a clean block in the third drill. She grinned the uncomplicated joy of someone who has just figured something out. Adrian saw it from across the room and said nothing because she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the girl beside her, a 12-year-old named Rosa, who had come because her mother had heard about the new program and thought it might help her daughter's confidence. And Mia was showing Rosa the adjustment in her stance that had made the difference in the careful, serious way of someone passing on something that matters. He turned back to his end of the room. He taught. Colonel Samuel Reed called on a Sunday evening in December. Adrian had not spoken to Reed in 6 years. Reed was 71 now and retired in the proper sense of the word. The full kind. The kind that sticks in a house in Montana that he had spent 30 years promising himself he would get to. He had apparently seen the video sometime in October and the settlement news sometime in November and had spent a month deciding whether to call. "I've been following it," Reed said. His voice was the same, the gravel, the patience, the complete absence of wasted words. "All of it." "Yes, sir." "You handled it right." "I'm not sure about all of it," Adrian said. "The parts that mattered," Reed said. "You got those right." A pause. "The girl." "Mia. She all right?" "She's better than all right," Adrian said. "She's teaching a 12-year-old how to block." Reed was quiet for a moment. "You opened a facility." "Yes, sir." "What do you call it?" Adrian told him. A long pause. The sound of Montana on a December evening, whatever that sounded like. "Good name," Reed said. "It was your line," Adrian said. "More or less. From a Thursday evening in the cafeteria when I was 23 and wrong about a few things." "You remember that?" "I wrote it down." Another pause, this one with a different quality. "Do you know what I remember about you from back then?" Reed said. "I'm not sure I want to." "You were always the one who asked why," Reed said. "Not to challenge, to understand. Most people, you tell them what to do and they do it, and that's sufficient. They don't need to know why. You always needed to know why." The gravel voice, the patience in it. That's the difference between someone who executes well and someone who leads well. The why changes what you do when the situation doesn't match the training. "The situation never matches the training," Adrian said. "No," Reed said. "It doesn't. That's why the why matters." Adrian stood at the kitchen window. December, now the street different in the cold, the lamplight different, the sky close and dark. "Colonel," he said. "Adrian. Thank you for what you gave me before." Reed was quiet for a long moment. "You were good work," he said finally. It was from Samuel Reed, as close to the word proud as he would ever get. Both of them knew it. "Keep doing what you're doing." "Yes, sir. And fix the mirror on the truck. Tom's been right about that." Adrian pulled the phone away from his ear and looked at it. "How do you know about the truck?" he said. "Tom Mercer called me in August," Reed said. There was something in the gravel voice that was not quite a smile, but occupied the same space. "He wanted to know who you were. He'd been wondering for 11 years. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were a man who could carry a great deal of weight without letting it bend him, and that he was lucky to have you in his shop." A pause. "He said he knew that. He just wanted to know the rest." Adrian looked at the window, at the ordinary dark street, at the world outside the house that had been loud for 11 months and was quieter now. Not quiet the way it had been before. Not the deliberate quiet he had built over 11 years. Different. The quiet of something that has been through weather and is still standing. The quiet of a foundation that has been tested and held. "Good night, Colonel," he said. "Good night, son," Reed said. And that was all. Mia asked him the question in January on a Saturday morning after training, sitting on the bench where she had once sat with Gerald in her lap, watching everything. "Dad, how many people could you beat if you had to?" He looked at the training floor. Rosa working a stance drill in the corner. 3 other students paired off and practicing the fall and recovery sequence he had taught them that morning. The room full of the ordinary sounds of people learning how to stand up. "I hope I never have to find out," he said. She frowned slightly the way she always did when she thought an answer was insufficient. "That's not what I mean. I mean you know what you can do. You know how capable you are. Doesn't that make you want to—" She searched for the word. "Show it." He looked at her, his daughter, 9 years old. Sharp as anything, careful as everything, sitting on the bench where she had once held a one-eyed rabbit and trusted him completely through 61 seconds that had changed the shape of the following year. "No," he said. "Why not?" He thought about Reed, about the cafeteria and the terrible coffee and the Thursday evening that had given him the most important thing he had ever been given. which was not a technique or a strategy, but a way of understanding what all the techniques and strategies were actually for. Because knowing what you can do and needing other people to know it are two different things, he said. The first one is useful. The second one is a problem. She thought about this. So the strength is for you, she said. Not for showing. The strength is for the people I love, he said. And for the people who need someone to stand up, when it's necessary. He held her gaze. And then you put it away. She looked at the training floor, at Rosa getting the stance right finally, and holding it. And when it's not necessary, Mia said slowly, you teach it. He looked at his daughter and felt in the whole quiet weight of that moment that she had understood something he had spent a lifetime learning. Yeah, he said. That's it exactly. She stood up from the bench, tucked Gerald under her arm. She still brought him to Saturday training, though he lived now in her bag rather than in her hands, and looked at the floor with the expression of someone who has more work to do and is ready to go do it. Okay, she said. I'm going to go help Rosa with the stance. I know, he said. She walked out onto the mat. Adrian watched her go, his daughter carrying everything she had been given, and everything she had earned, and everything she was still becoming. And he thought about the man he had been at 23, and the man he was now, and everything between them that had bent him and tested him and failed to break him. And he thought about the crayon sun on the envelope in the cabinet, and the extra page folded behind it, and the 14 people who were not alone anymore, and the right use and the choosing every day, over and over the choosing. He watched Mia put her hand on Rosa's shoulder and say something that made Rosa laugh and try the stance again, and this time Rosa held it. And Adrian Brooks, who had spent 32 years learning what strength was actually for, stood at the edge of the floor he had rebuilt from the ground up and understood in the simple and total way that only arrives after you have lived long enough to earn it. That this right here, this ordinary Saturday morning, this room full of people learning how to stand, was the answer to every question he had ever been asked about power. Not what you can do to people, what you can build for them. That was the whole truth. That was all of it. And it was enough.